Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we are back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Stacy Bama Burr, and we're going to have some fun here today. I got a lot of questions. I got a lot of things to talk about. It's going to be a good time. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. I'm excited to be here. Before we get into this, I want to thank all the new crew members that we've accumulated over the past week. The join the crew or the crew members are to help directly support the podcast. If you go to the link in the bio and click join the crew, you'll have access to 14 of my ebooks at no cost, as well as 15% off all Elite FTS apparel, all Elite FTS coffee, Table Talk coffee, limited edition gear, stuff like that. And as soon as we hit 200 members, we will have exclusive AMA content just for those members. So head to the description, click the link, and sign up today. It's the fun part of introducing all the podcasts is you have the sponsors, and it's awesome when you're one of those sponsors. The other thing is anything that you get through Elite FTS, discount code Table Talk, 10% off your first order. With that, we'll get started. So Stacy is, I hate to say best known for, because there's a lot of things you're probably known for, but most people are going to equate you with the all-time world record in the 148s and the high Wilks and powerlifting and the duration that you were in there. I think that's what they misunderstand with that is your training age. Understood.
Right? Because one of the, I don't want to say criticisms, but one of the things I've heard is, well, she only competed for 5 years. And it's like, well, let's talk about that.
Let's
right?
absolutely
let's talk about that. Because it's the level is one thing, the commitment's one thing, the discipline's one thing. So there's all these other things that go into that. So before getting into that, because I think there's a lot to be learned from that, because what I love about this podcast is sitting down with people that know what being all in means, right? Because it doesn't mean what a lot of people think it means.
No. You just say
it doesn't, right? And it's the way that I like to try to frame it is if you speak to somebody that you know has been there, whatever there is defined as, and then you will talk to other people and they're going to say, well, yeah, I'm all in. So if it's powerlifting, whatever it is, and then you're thinking of what your all in was.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to compare it to what their all in is. And you're thinking,
this is not the same.
Yeah, you're like, your all in is like 20% of what mine was. But to them, their all in is their all in.
Yeah.
Because that's all they know as being what that is. Where there's levels, of this thing. Whatever.
A lot of people think that they're all in, or they're, I'm committed, whatever it takes. Yes. I've heard that so many times, but it's really hard to kind of level and reason with people whenever you know what all in means, what whatever it takes means.
Yes.
And most of the time, whenever you talk to people that actually have been there, you don't have to remind them that you were all in. You don't have to remind people that know that, I'll do whatever it takes. You can see it. You can see in the results. And that is one thing that just truly I've always been. And no matter what the task is, I'm going to be all in no matter what it is.
Yeah, so I think the big thing with that is they'll always say that they're all in until you ask them to do something that's not convenient for their all in. So like you're all in until
it gets hard.
We recommend you need to sleep, 8 hours a day. Then they're not all in anymore. They're just all in for what they conveniently want to be all in for. Where
all in for training. So all in for 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. All in means from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed and when you go to bed.
And for the result to impact the outcome. So whatever it takes to be able to get that outcome, where that's where that 5 years, 4 years, 3, hell, a year for whatever, it doesn't matter, 10-year, what that we got to like, what is the all in now? Now, wait, you see, if it's 30% all in over 10 years, well, that doesn't compare to somebody that's 90 or 100% all in over one.
Yeah.
You know, and there's shortfals, you know, there's pros and cons, you know, to that.
Absolutely.
You know, that's where that conversation gets interesting. The higher up somebody gets on that thing, because the cons, they do outweigh the pros. And when you step back and look back, you're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change anything.
Absolutely not.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
So how did you, before we get into that, how did you get involved with just strength training in general? Where did that start from?
So I was a college athlete. I played college softball, and once I got done playing college ball, I'd always trained, and I loved, you know, the two-a-days, and I loved working hard, but I needed an outlet to be competitive. You know, I knew that I'm wired a little different, right? And so I knew I needed something, an outlet to be competitive at. And I trained with a bunch of local bodybuilders at the gym, you know, just me and a bunch of big guys. And they were like, "You're pretty strong for a girl. Have you ever thought about powerlifting?" And I was like, "Strong for a girl? Okay, well, watch this," you know? And so I was like, well, I'll try it. And I did my first meet at Donnie Thompson's compound in Columbia, actually. And Donnie Thompson saw me compete. I had no idea what I was doing, but he was like, "You have a little potential. You should probably keep at this," you know? And so I was like, okay, well, if he says that I should probably keep at this, I might have a shot. So I just continued to train, and I put all of my emphasis in powerlifting and strength sports, which was something I'd never done before because I was an athlete. So I was thinking about, you know, the quote unquote functional training, or, you know, just speed to go along with, you know, not just raw strength. And so I put my all in pretty much then. Whenever I competed, it was 2014. And that was when I started my career in powerlifting.
If you're playing collegiate softball, well, I assume that you started playing when you were young.
Yeah.
Very young.
Yeah.
So what age did you start playing?
I probably started playing softball. I played baseball first because I didn't want to play with the girls. The girls were just wussies, and I wanted to play with people that were good. So I played with the boys, played baseball first. Probably, I think when I was about 13. 13 was when I started, and then I transitioned over to, I think, softball when maybe I was like 15, 16. And so I started playing softball. I played for like travel leagues. I played just all around all year, and I loved it. I loved playing sports, and I loved just having, you know, I was pretty much a team lead everywhere I went, and I loved being able to have, you know, my team behind me, and I loved just being able to, okay, if I was struggling, if I was in a slump, I could just, okay, I'll stay after practice and I'll take 100 cuts. Like, I want to be better. And I've always just loved the idea that I'm good, but I can be better. And if you want to be a leader, you've got to be willing to put that effort in to be better. So that's something that no matter the sport or whatever it is, I've always wanted to be the best that I could be at whatever sport. So that was where it kind of started, was playing softball.
With how was the powerlifting aspect? Because you said you were looking for something to be competitive. And did you feel like towards the end of the softball, it was no longer competitive enough for you?
It was still competitive, but I say, you know, once you graduate and you're, you know, a normal person, athletic, a non-athletic regular person after college, right?
Yeah.
I just needed something because I wasn't waking up for, you know, the 5 a.m. conditioning anymore. I wasn't, you know, have the strict practices and strict training schedule like that. So I needed something that I realized I thrived well when I had a schedule, when I had a really strict routine. So a nice system set in place. So I felt like I still needed that, but I needed there to be a goal at the end of it. So I wasn't just having a system for just my training, you know, exclusively. I wanted to be able to push and have markers. So with powerlifting, you have the strength markers and you have kind of, you know, some progression there. So that gave me a good basis to go with there. So that was
I get it. I was thinking when you were speaking earlier that you transitioned from softball into powerlifting while you were in college. So you basically took the softball as far as it could be taken.
Yeah, I did.
And then it's just like,
I needed something. Yeah, there was a hole. There was a hole, and I needed something to kind of tune this in. So.
Okay. So how did the powerlifting, how did that fall into that then? So I get that you went to Donnie's meet. Yeah. So you're in a gym training somewhere and somebody says something. Yep. Like, tell me about that.
I pretty much just trained like a bodybuilder, essentially. Yeah. I trained with a group of bodybuilders, and just, I would always, if I couldn't do the, say, shoulder presses with like 50 or 60 pounds, if I would go all in, I would just go till failure. And if I couldn't do them this week, I would say, okay, I'm going to do them next week. And so I just kept linearly progressing, you know, to start with. And then I just kept getting stronger and stronger. And I love the bench press. Bench press for me has always been
squat is the one that gets me going, but bench press, especially for a chick, I was benching 185, just some bro touch and go reps, but I was benching 185 in high school, right? Because I wasn't afraid of it. I was afraid of squatting, truly. I was afraid of squatting. I didn't really know what I was doing. I never had a coach. But benching, you're just laying down, taking a nap, and it felt powerful, right? And to be good at something that not a lot of other girls were good at, that gave me a little bit of, just kind of confidence moving forward. And so I realized that I was good at these things, and that there wasn't, powerlifting wasn't a real sport whenever, especially in South Carolina, rural South Carolina, nobody was really doing this, and it wasn't at the level that it is now. I was just one of those gym freaks that was just yelling and screaming in the corner, lifting heavy weights, right? Get out my feelings. But that was where I started, and I realized after doing Donnie's Meet that I was pretty good at this, especially not knowing anything that I was doing. I showed up to the meet and I had committed to myself, I'm going to have the biggest total here. Like, of all the women, I don't care. And Donnie did something that meet. I don't know if he's, if it's still something that he does, but it was just about highest total. So no matter your weight class, no matter what. And I think I was a tiny 148. I remember weighing in, and they was like, oh, you're a little 148. I think I weighed in like 138 or 139. But I was determined from the time I walked in there that I was going to outlift every single one of those girls. 181ers, heavies, I was going to outlift all of them. And I came pretty close. I came 10 pounds under there was a 181. I still remember her name. I still remember. You never forget when you first get beat, right? So I remember I came 10 pounds underneath her, and I was really upset with myself. I was like, man, I didn't do it. I didn't do what I set out to do in my very first meet, not knowing anything. But I was like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get better. And so then it just sparked in me that I wanted to do this. And I continued, training and stuff. And a couple people contacted me after this meet. It was a small federation, a backyard federation, honestly. And somebody contacted me and said, oh, Stacy, you're 10 pounds off of a junior world record. And I thought that was highly, I thought that was something really impressive then, right? I was like, oh, a world record, me? And I was like, it just opened up my eyes, because I was a small town country girl. Nobody knew my name. Nobody knew who I was, but I was determined that I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to do something in this life that just nobody could take away from me. And so it just opened up my eyes. And at this point, I told my biggest fans, one of my grandpa, I was like, hey, grandpa, I was like, I'm 10 pounds off of a world record. Can you believe that? And he told me something that changed the direction of my life. He said, of course I can believe it. He said, you're the strongest woman in the world. And I took that, I put it in my pocket, and I lived with that. I lived with that somebody told me that I was the best, the strongest woman in the world. So you know what? It was just up to me to prove it. So that was pretty much the chip that was on my shoulder, was I can do this. I can be the absolute very best there's ever been. All you got to do is just work. Because that's the only thing that I've ever been taught, was how to work. I had never been coached. I had never been formally, anything like that. All I knew was that if I just kept showing up and I kept figuring out ways to get better and better and better, even if it was minutely, right? But if I kept showing up and doing the things, I was going to get better. And I knew that there was, in my mind, there was nobody out there that was working as hard as me. There was nobody out there that was going to give this much effort and energy. And I remember sitting in the parking lot after I had that conversation at the gym, and I looked up all the all-time world records. This was after my first meet. I looked up all the all-time, what's the best that's ever been done at 148? And at that time, Jen Thompson had a lot of, the heaviest, highest numbers. And I was like, I can do this. I can do this. If she's been doing this for years and years, this is my first day, right? And okay, I'm already here. Well, how do I get there? And so that curiosity and just the idea that I was, or I could be, if I put all my effort and energy to it, to be the best. And that was what I decided to do. And so that's how it all started. And just the words of affirmation from my grandpa that I was the strongest woman in the world. Old people don't lie to you. They'll tell you, they'll tell you something, even if it's harsh, right? You don't want to hear that.
Well, it sounds like you wanted something more even before you said that.
Yeah.
Right. So going way back, into when you were younger, tell me about a time to where you really started thinking about, look, I don't want to just stay here in this rural town. There's more for me. Like, where did that start from?
Like I said, I grew up in the country, and all I knew was work. All I knew was, okay, if I put this effort in, I'm going to get this result. My dad was pretty tough on me. I'm not going to lie. And he always expected the best. He always expected perfection. And if I didn't deliver that, I suffered the consequences of that, right? And so that perfectionist mindset, or that desire to be better and better and better, that started there. But I always realized that just, you know, in a rural town, people were content with being, okay, I want this normal life. I want a big house. I want to get married. I want the white picket fence. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be in South Carolina. I knew that just there was more out there. It was a really big world. And I didn't even, my first powerlifting meet, I rolled up change, and I told my grandparents, I went to, it was my first national meet. I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm going to Vegas, because that was a huge deal at that time, right? But even when I was younger, I'd say I knew that there was more out there for me. And I knew that the type of life that people were satisfied with, where I grew up and what they were living in, that wasn't for me. That there was more out there, and I wanted to make an impact. Like, I've just always loved helping other people, even when I was younger. I was bullied when I was younger. I was overweight as a kid. I had an older sister who was much better than me at everything. So I'd always get called her little sister. I wouldn't get called by my name. And so to me, I have a deep sense of, I want to create a name for myself, and I want to die, and I want people to remember Stacy Burr. I want them to say my name, right? And so that really started when I was younger. I realized there was more out there for me, and that I wanted to do something bigger than just have, the nice house, the nice car, the little happy life. I wanted to do something big, but I didn't know how. And I didn't really know what that was or what it looked like, but I just knew if I kept giving my effort and following my heart, as, cliche as it sounds, I knew I was going to get somewhere with that.
I think for all of us, that situations when we're younger, either shape us in spite of or despite of,
absolutely,
that situation. So when you're younger dealing with all that, were there certain people that said things to you that inspired you to say, look, I want to get the fuck out of here, or look, I'm done with this shit. I need to find a way out? And what were some of those things?
People told me I was crazy, and I loved working out. Working out for me started out as just my safe place, right? So no matter what, if, I was getting bullied at school, or if, life was hard at home, anything like that, I could train. And training was, to me, I can walk in, and if I want to go do curls in the squat rack, obviously not ideal, right? But I could. Nobody could stop me. If I wanted to go deadlift 9,000 pounds or whatever it was, nobody could tell me that I couldn't. And just that, having that freedom and the ability that I can do whatever I want to, that freedom, it made me feel just ultimately powerful. But training for me was my life. And people in my area, they told me I was crazy. They were like, training's never going to make a living for you. Training's never going to be a real job. Why don't you go get a real job? Why don't you just give this up? Because you're never going to be good enough to make it to the next level. You're never going to be good enough. And then how much money's in that, you know? So it's all these things. I was just determined that I knew what I was capable of. Even if I didn't know what I was capable of, I knew I was capable of more. And so I kind of started, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I was like, well, I'm going to prove all these people wrong. I'm going to prove all these people wrong that have doubted me, or said I wasn't good enough, or said, I didn't have, the right last name, or I wasn't powerlifting. I thought about bodybuilding when I first got into training and stuff, but I didn't like the idea of it, because you can do all the things right for 12 weeks, 20 weeks, however long, get on stage and not be what somebody's looking for, right? But with powerlifting, if you do the work and you do every aspect that you need to recover, you're going to get the result that you put in. If you put that effort in, you're going to get the result. It doesn't matter if you're ugly, it doesn't matter if you're skinny, it doesn't matter if you're gay, if you're straight, any of those things. All that matters is that you are willing to do that work, and you're there to show it. And so that's when I kind of just fell in love with it. And I realized it wasn't about, once I got a little bit older, it wasn't about proving people wrong, because who cares about Joe Schmo that says I can't do anything, but he hates his job, he hates his life, he hates his wife, he hates everything about it. And so I'm not concerned with the thoughts that he's saying to me. What I'm worried about is how I'm sleeping at night. Am I sleeping at night knowing that I'm chasing my purpose, that I'm doing what I need to do? And so that gave me a lot more, courage going forward. It wasn't about proving people wrong necessarily. It was just about proving myself right. And so my grandpa and my grandparents, even if they didn't understand, they didn't understand lifting weights, they didn't understand what it all meant, but they encouraged me that if it was something that I cared about, to go for it. And so that really just kind of helped me move forward, to know that somebody believed in me.
Was ball able to scratch that itch?
Was that?
Was playing ball able to scratch that itch, or that desire to kind of get out? And
I love playing softball. I love being a part of a team. And I I still miss it to this day, right? But it's not the same. And I think part of that is it being a team sport.
Yeah.
You know, and don't get me wrong, powerlifting, yeah, sure, you're under the bar by yourself most of the time, but, you know, you got a whole village behind you. But in a team sport, there's other players on the field. And so other people's mistakes or other people's, you know, everything, you can kind of play off of one another. If you're striking out, somebody else can hit a home run and make it right back up. So there's like a give and a take there, right? With powerlifting, it's all about you, you know, and it's all about like how you're showing up. And so for me, I feel like the individuality of that scratched the itch. That scratched the itch because I have to do the things that are going to make me better, regardless of what anybody else is doing, regardless of what my training partners are doing, regardless of anything else. My performance and outcome is going to be based on what I'm doing. So that really gave it to me.
Well, the individual aspect of just training.
Yeah.
You can, for lack of a better word, you can deal with your own shit, right? So I relate to the proving people wrong. I also relate to, you know, understanding later on that it's not so much about that, but it was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That was the drive, because you can only push people down so much. You know, tell them that they can't be something so many times, tell them that they're stupid so many times, tell them that, you know, they're worthless, that they're never going to get out of a small town. You can only tell people those so many times to one of two things are going to happen. A, they're going to believe it.
Yep.
Or B, they're going to resist it. Right. And so I'm intrigued with the people that resist it as to why. You know, it's normally it was something that somebody said that was just that breaking point. Like, you know what? Fuck you. Or it was the other way. Somebody gave them just a little bit of room to be able to say, you know what? You can do this. And then all of a sudden, all the other noise dampens, but it's still there.
Oh, for
you know,
sure.
it isn't until you start to actually accomplish something that you realize that these demons, they weren't externally coming into your body from anywhere. You know, they were internally being generated by believing the shit everybody was saying.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so, you know, I'll write an FU on my chest when I'm doing heavy shit. And it's not for me to say, fuck you to the world. It might have been at one point in time. For me, it's a reminder to say, fuck you to myself for believing them.
Yeah.
You know, because that falls on me. I can control that, you know, so that pivot that you made at a certain period of time, it's for a lot of us, it's found in the weight room, you know, and that becomes therapy, whatever people want to call it. You know, I can go on my whole rant about that too, but you know, it's okay to have clay therapy. It's okay to have all this different type of therapy, but steel, that's not therapy, but clay can be. You know, talking to a stranger I don't fucking know, that can't, you know, anyhow, I
am right there with you. I'm right there with you.
It plays that role in there and then provides that space. You know, you said earlier that in the gym you found freedom.
Yeah.
You know, because it is. I mean, regardless of how dumb the program may look, looking back, it was still you deciding what you wanted to do, training as hard as you wanted to do. And, you know, at least for me at that younger age, I didn't have that freedom anywhere else.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, everything else was just uncertainty, doubt, and all this other stuff. This was just like, no, I have this.
That was the one thing I was good at, right? The one thing that no matter what rain or shine, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, usually if I'm sad or upset, angry, that makes it even more powerful because, you know, the outside world, it tries to break us down, right? And people try to break us down, but it's up to us whether we allow those thoughts to, like you said, fuel us or we just kind of start to believe it. And so sometimes, I mean, when you're surrounded by just that uncertainty, you're like, maybe this, I've never seen anybody do this before. Because back when I started doing this and training so hard, there wasn't nearly the big, you know, scale of powerlifting. It was really just, you know, the powerlifters were the fat guys that were in the corner and just yelling and screaming and just making noise and clanging weights. I was like, oh, that's me. That's what I want to do. I just want to lift as heavy as I can. I want to, you know, release these demons regardless of what that looks like, right? But now, like, so starting, I didn't have necessarily anything to go off on. I'd never seen it done before. So it's, you know, there was an uncertainty of, is this actually something I can do? Is this a real thing? But I think part of that, the cool thing is anything's a real thing if you make it a real thing. Like my job now, coaching athletes and doing a lot of it remotely and online, that was not a real job. People used to give me a ton of like, you know, dog me about, oh, well, you need to get a real job, Stacy. Meanwhile, now I'm making more money than all of them, you know, and like not a brag or anything like that, but it's like you have to start somewhere and you got to believe it first, right? So it's like you believe it first, whether you've seen it done or not, but you set the standard for whatever it is that you want to create in your life. And that's in the weight room. That is where I developed that, because I realized, you know, physiques, you see people that have big backs, you see people that have big arms, you see people that never train legs, you can build that. And so regardless of what life has in store for you, you can build and shape your body to do whatever you want it to do, to look however you want it to look. And that freedom of expression, or that, you know, feeling of just that space where you can make anything happen, like things that shouldn't be able to be possible, right? Like I looked at me even whenever I was, the biggest I've ever been was like 170, and I still made the cut to 148, which was quite, that was probably the hardest, challenging, very challenging. A little PTSD from that, right? But it's like that to me, I don't know. I looked at myself across the board and I don't look like I should be as strong as I am. I don't look like, oh, she's an absolute specimen. Look at those arms and legs. I was just so determined and had so much willpower, just more than really anybody else, that if I was committed to doing something, it was done. And it didn't matter how long it took. It didn't matter, you know, the time. We talked about the time frame earlier. You know, it's 5 years of competing, and that's why I don't get a lot of credit for some things. But I think I should get more credit. And why is that? Because I decided I was going to do something. And if it was up to me and my timeline, I'd have been done in 3 years. I'd have been done in 2 years. Yep. But it took me 5. And I committed to however long it took to do what it takes to get there. And, you know, that's how long it took. So no matter what, it's about the effort that you're willing to apply and just set that into rolling.
Now, the funny thing about the criticism, you know, the people telling you, don't do the coaching, you can't do this, you know, all the other kind of stuff is, and now that you have a successful coaching business, the criticism's still there, it's just different. So now the criticism is, you know, oh, I can't believe she's making money doing this. Like, no, fucked up, right? It's like, oh, you can't make money doing this, right? And it flips around to, look, oh, I can't believe she makes money doing that.
Yeah, that's not, it's still not a real job.
Yeah,
I'm like,
well, it's always there. It's always there. That external criticism is always around us. It's the internal that you have to be able to control and bust yourself out of, you know, because everybody deals with it. You got, as you mature, as you get older, as you accomplish more, you become better attuned. It's saying, the fuck did I just say to myself? Yeah. You know, and sometimes it might be 3 or 4 days, you know, but now I'm interested in this weight cut, right? So tell me about that weight cut. How did that work out? What happened? How did you do it?
So I was training with Trevor Jaffe, and I had been managing my weight, and I ate the same thing every single day. I moved down to live with Trevor because I wanted to I thought I was doing everything right. And to me, like I said, I was, right? But I wanted to increase that. I wanted to make it to an even higher level. I was like, okay, well, if I think I'm doing everything right and I'm still not where I need to be, I need to level this up. So I moved in with Trevor and I stayed with him and I lived with him. I ate, slept, breathed, did the same thing every single day towards my training. So I was pretty much, I was gaining size, I was gaining mass, and I was, hey, Trevor, I'm a lot heavier. I mean, I was looking good, I was feeling strong, but I'm a lot heavier than I've been previously, and I know how to cut weight. I mean, it's, you know, it's pretty much par for course, right? It's going to be tough regardless, but I got up to 172, and I was like, hey, Trevor, you're not concerned about this because I'm feeling big, I'm feeling happy, but you're not concerned? And he was like, no, you're good, you're good. So about 2 weeks out from the Arnold, which was in 2019 was where I last competed, I was like, all right, I started pulling carbs. I pulled carbs for like 2 weeks and the scale barely moved. And I was like, Trevor, I'm a little concerned. I flew up to Ohio to the Arnold and I was still, if I recall correctly, I was at least still 163, 162, way heavier than what I wanted to be. So, you know, I was like, Trevor, I'm still really heavy. When I got to Ohio and I was like, okay, this is going to be a death cut, right? And so it was. I had to, I pretty much didn't get to eat for 2-3 days in theory, right? And then I did the sauna sessions, and just in and out. And it was hellacious, to say the least. And there was times in that sauna, because I was by myself. And I don't know if I can do this. And I just kept telling myself, you're the best in the world. You've got to do this. You know you can do this. You've put all this time, all this effort, all this work, all you gotta do is sit here and just be hot. All you have to do is just suffer a little bit more. And once you get done with this hard part, then it's the fun part, right? Then you get to show everyone what you've been doing and how good you are. And so I did the death cut, and I finally, I spit. I was doing everything I possibly could. My lips were like cracked and bleeding by the next day, right? But I got on that scale, and it depended on, so I was going for the all-time highest Wilks, which obviously I wanted a number that gave me the validation that I was the number one across anything, male, female, anything. And so that was Wilks. I'm not one of these people that thinks, oh man, Wilks is so high. I couldn't even tell you what it was, but I knew I needed the highest one. You got it for me?
668.
Okay, sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. But see, I don't even care truly. It was just that marker. And so once I weighed in, that was when I figured out how much I needed to total, because it was all dependent on, my weight. I weighed in at 147, and I was like, okay, thank you, God. Thank you, God. And then I got my IV, and I started rehydrating up, and I got back up to my fight weight or competition weight. I think I competed 165, 166, which was still a little under where my training weight really was. But that was truly, that was the hardest part, was getting ready for weight for competition. And so I knew once I made it past that mental hurdle, the rest was icing on the cake.
How'd the warm-ups feel in the squat?
Oh my God. that was the first time I'd ever used a 65-pound bar. So I've been training with a 55-pound bar. And although in my mind I'm 6'4" and, about 300 something pounds, I'm relatively little, right? I'm a relatively little girl with relatively small hands. Man, I'm saying this out loud and people are going to hear this. I'm actually 6'4", guys. But I got up underneath that 65-pound bar, and I was like, this is different. It felt different on my back. And so from the time I got under the bar, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little apprehensive, but I just kept telling myself, okay, warm-ups feel like crap. That means the platform's going to feel that much better. Because typically that's kind of how it works for me, at least, right? It was probably, I think, 65-pound bar is going to throw off my math, but it was 3 plates on the other side, something casual. And I got up underneath it, and I didn't have anybody spotting me or anything, because it's 335 or something. I squatted 565. So nobody was really paying me much attention when I was doing my warm-ups. But because I couldn't get that bar set straight on my back, I went down with 335, and I'm talking about I came up and I stutter stepped and about died in warm-ups on 335. I racked the bar up because I just lost my balance. I racked the bar, and I sat there for a second, and I was like, okay, I've just got to squat 250 something or 230 more pounds than this. It's no big deal. I just fell over on this, and I was like, it's no big deal. I went, put my belt down, and went to the bathroom, came back out, and I was like, get it together. Get it together. So I could have gotten my feelings and gotten in my head about that, because every part of me wanted to. This feels different. This feels new. I'm going for an all-time record on squat, so this is really important. This is, everything else, icing on the cake. I like to squat as much and bench as much as I possibly could to build that subtotal. Because me and deadlifts, I wanted to deadlift as little as possible, right? As little as I needed. So squatting and warming up, whether it's the bar, whether it's the weight cut, no matter what it was, there were a lot of factors that I didn't feel on. And even after I got done with my 3rd attempt squat at the meet, I got done and I was like, I'm sorry I made that harder than I needed to Trevor. I was like, that still wasn't very good. And he was like, it was good enough for today, right? It was good enough for today.
What were they saying in the warm-up room after that bobble?
Get it together. I mean, nobody really had to tell me much. Does that make sense? It was kind of I don't need that encouragement, that attaboy. I just need you to stand there, make sure I don't die, because I know I've got this. And I'm mentally strong enough. And just we treated it like it was casual. Didn't even say anything really about it. Just okay, figure it out. And that's kind of been the modality, or just the method, just figure it out. So if you fluke it up or whatever, I was just getting slightly pitched because of the way the bar was kind of pulling me forward. So I just tried to correct myself and do whatever it was that I could. But nobody really even said much about it, because I don't know how I operate. Is a lot of times the more you talk about something, the more that idea grows in your head, right?
Yeah.
If we talk about something that is wrong, and now we're going to amplify, versus if I can kind of mentally figure out what I need to do and execute, I'm a really good athlete that way, right? So we didn't really say much about it. It was just, all right, figure it out. And we did. Yeah.
So after all that, and then what did you squat that meet? 565. 565.
Yeah.
So after you squatted that on the 3rd attempt, I know it's kind of hard to remember.
No, I remember.
What was going through your head after that?
I told Trevor I apologize because it wasn't good enough, because I was like, it wasn't, I didn't execute as well. The bar rolled on my back a little bit. I got up out of it and I apologized. It wasn't good, better. And I knew that I wasted a little bit of energy on it, but I knew it was the all-time record then at that time. I was happy with it. I was content. And the hardest part of the day I felt like was over. So it was like a relief that if I had handled that variable, I had handled the weight cut. If I just squatted an all-time record and I put 565 on the bar, that meant I had to bench a little less. That meant I had to, deadlift a little less. So the more I was happy. I was content. I was thrilled. And I used to talk myself. I counted down, because we talked about squats and just how squats will get you there, and there's so many factors that can go wrong, or things that, if you don't execute it properly, there go your quads, there goes your back, there goes anything, right? Once I got done with that, I used to count down after my last heavy squat in training. I was like, okay, well, after my last heavy squat, I was like, you got 3 more to do. I used to count it down. So after my opener, I was like, you've got 2 more things to do, Stacy. After my second attempt, 1 more. And once I did the 1 more, I felt good. I was like, okay, 6 more things to do, talking about the bench and the deadlift. But the squat was really, once I got that on the board, it created momentum. It just kept creating momentum. And that was what started the whole day. But I still remember exactly how I felt.
The could have been more. It's an interesting thing that you said that, because as I was going through some of your videos, training videos and so forth, I heard you say that several times.
Yeah.
After certain weights or whatever it would be, it was almost apologetic.
Yeah.
Like where does that come from? What?
My dad, what you talked about, that perfectionist. And it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because wanting to be a perfectionist and wanting to do everything right, or wanting to get the absolute very best of yourself. I remember we were in training, and so Trevor's a conservative guy, conservative coach. And I told him what I wanted to do and what I was going to do. And I remember we competed before the Arnold, and I was taking the all-time squat record then. And I believe I squatted 535, if I'm not mistaken, or 545. And that's what we took on my 3rd attempt. And Trevor was really hesitant, reluctant about it. He was like, well, based on this projection of this. And I was like, Trevor, respectfully, I'm going to squat this. And he was like, okay. I don't care what your projection is. I don't care what your mass is. I'm telling you, I'm going to do this. And so that's why we kind of worked really well together. He was a conservative guy. He kept me reined in. But then I also had the balls to tell him, respectfully, I'm going to do this, right? And so there was something about this. We had I told him what I want to squat, 565. And he was like, okay, well, if you want to do that, I need you. We hit an AMRAP. We hit an AMRAP in training. It was probably 4 or 5 weeks out, something like that, of 475 squat. And he was like, I need at least, I don't even remember the number. He's like, I need at least 5. And I was like, okay, I'll give you 10. We went into training, and I hit 7 reps of it. I was upset. It was the most intense set I've ever done. I couldn't feel my legs, but I just kept moving, and I kept standing up, and I kept standing up. And I got done. I got out the bar, and Trevor was so amped. He was so excited. I walked out, and I was like, it's not 10. And so there's definitely, I look back at my training, I look back at a lot of things, and I'm like, and Trevor was like, how many have you ever done that for in a straight set? And I was like, maybe 2, maybe 3. He's like, well, you doubled that. I was like, it wasn't 10. And so that perfectionist mentality is like, when I was, with my dad, and I always tried to make sure the effort was matched or was what was expected. And so that perfectionist mentality is kind of went on with me. It makes me miss out on a lot of things. It makes me miss out on appreciating the little wins, and being like, oh, okay, I just doubled the amount that I've squatted 475 before, but in my mind, I wanted 10, so it wasn't good enough. And that idea has kind of ran with me for a long time that, okay, it's just not good enough. You have to do better. You have to do better. It's a struggle, because mentally it's hard to be in a place of, oh, you're not good enough. But then that's what really fueled me continuously, was to get better. Because if you're not good enough, you can always be better, and you can control that. So I don't know where this conversation started, but this is
I mean, when you came into the sport, you started training for meets. I'm positive that beast was coming out way more frequently than it was towards the later end of your career, because you can't train like that all the time, right? So, but it's a battle though too, right? Because it's the mechanism that you use to pull out what you need to pull out to be able to do what you're supposed to do, even though it's over and above, on the arousal curve, right? It's over and above where it really needs to be.
Yeah.
At what point in time did you realize you need that but you also need to control it more.
When I met Trevor, when I started coaching with Trevor, I had a really bad meet at the 2018 US Open. And I say a bad meet, I placed fourth, but I totally undershot my expectation. I wanted that to be my last meet. I wanted that to be where I hit the highest total. I wanted that to be, the end. Every meet that I did, I intended that to be the last one. But I met Trevor and he talked to me and he's like, can you raise your arm above your head? And I was like, yeah, for sure. And I turned and I opened up and he's like, you can't raise your arm above your head. You're killing yourself. You're not going to be able to do the thing that you want to do because you're not going to make it there. Yeah. You're not going to be in one piece. And that was tough to hear, right? Because I was like, you don't know me. You don't know. I train harder than anybody. Oh, good. Trevor really reined me in. And so like when I met him and started working with him after the 2018 US Open, I hated it. I'm not going to lie. I hated Trevor's training. I hated the way that he kept me reeled in. I felt like my training was just like, I'm not going hard enough. I was like, I'm not going to be strong enough because I'm not going hard enough. I'm not walking out of these sessions not being able to walk, I'm not going hard enough. I'm not going to get that result. But I just trusted Trevor and I trusted the process because he told me, he told me how this was going to work and that I was pretty much forcing myself and going too hard in training and that I wasn't going to get that outcome. And like, especially when you get stronger and stronger, you can't hit those top ends like that, anymore and be able to recover from them, no matter what kind of drugs or anything like that you take. And so I wanted to take minimal drugs. And so in order to do that and prioritize the recovery, we had to kind of keep that training reeled in. And so it was probably the very last year of my training is when I started training like an adult or training like, a responsible adult. And I do credit that totally and completely to Trevor because he's the one that made me realize that, so RP 12.5 isn't really, because I thought effort was everything. And even still in ways, sure, effort is a lot of everything. But if you're working so hard, but you can't make it to the platform, it doesn't really matter. So
did you displace the discipline? So in other words, let's say that discipline was a 10 in the training and then it gets pulled back and you're still trying to figure out, it's not a 10, it's like a 7. Did you just go harder in some other side? Nutrition side, visualization, some other side to make up, because it doesn't go away. Yeah. That's a fallacy that people think it just, you're displacing it somewhere. So
I put it into everything else. So like I started journaling. I wrote every single night. I wrote out like my thoughts on training. I wrote out what I needed to do to get better. So I started hacking the system, right? So since I had a little more effort and energy, I felt like, since my training wasn't RP 12.5 and I don't have to sleep for 12 hours a day to try to, maximize that, I started hacking the system. I realized that like, even though I said I was the best in the world, I knew I was the best in the world. I knew I was capable of that. But I realized that I had to, some people, Mariana, she can train 3 days a week, once a month, something like that. And she can go out there and she can beat all my totals, right? If she really wanted to. For me, I had to give 110% in whatever aspect that looked like. So I visualized every single morning. Every night when I went to bed, I didn't know the weights I was going to have to lift, but it sounds crazy, right? But I went to bed thinking about myself locking out the deadlift, thinking about myself like standing up the squat and what it was going to feel like. And so that way, anytime I did the heavy training, it was already done. It wasn't a matter of if I'm going to get it or if I'm not. I'd already seen myself do it. I've already stood up underneath this weight. I'm there. I've already done it. So I'm not scared. And so I visualized, I meditated usually every morning of the day. I started going on like walks, just like decompression kind of walks, and just like help my digestion and stuff. Like, before in the morning, nighttime, I started doing mobility. That was something I'd never really, I feel like I'm kind of old school, especially to be as young as I am. I just want to train hard. I just want to train hard, beat myself up and not take care of myself and expect a good result. But I started doing my mobility and not just, stretching and foam rolling, but like active movements and stuff. I started doing it in the morning when I wake up, at nighttime when I go to bed, and before training. So I felt good. My body felt good. And that was like the little tiny pieces that I started adding in when I moved down to live with Trevor. It all added up. So my effort and the discipline was still there, it was just dispersed a little bit differently. And so that was really the combination that we put the system in place. I woke up at the same time every day. I went to bed at the same time every day. I didn't do anything. And when I say I didn't do anything, I lived with Trevor. I never had a key to his house. We went to training. We went to train together. I cooked my food. I came home, I went to bed. The only time I left the house, as depressing as it sounds, was to go for my walks or to go to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. I did absolutely nothing else. You want to ask me if I can go bowling or I can go hang out? Sorry, I've got a bedtime. Sorry, I can't go bowling. I've got, tendonitis, can't do it. I literally put every single ounce of my effort into my goal, and that was why it worked.
With all your effort going into that, mm-hmm. which is to me, that's what you're more known for than the total, to be honest with you, is when it came to the decision of the PEDs, because you just said a little bit earlier that you didn't want to go hard on those, mm-hmm. right? So you were going to make up for it on those other areas. That's counter to your personality.
Absolutely.
So how did you wrap your head around that, for one thing? And then how did you make that decision to not go so hard there, but harder? You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I feel like with PEDs, so I had a guy that looked out for me, quote unquote, looked out for me. I wouldn't call him a coach, but he gave me a program and I just showed up, right? Yeah. I showed up and did whatever. It did not make any sense, but I got strong just because mm-hmm. I did the work. He wanted me to take more and more drugs, and I was naive enough to be like, okay. And he would tell me, he said, don't you want to be the best? Okay, so I'd stand up against the wall and they'd inject me with whatever it was, and I would hope for the best, right? Mm-hmm. He said, you want to be the best, right? Okay. But I never was truly. Steroids to me, when I was young and natty, I used to think that I was going to beat everyone. No drugs needed. I used to think that, I can beat all these girls that are taking drugs. I'm just the absolute, because I work so hard and I can do this. Then I realized that everyone that says they're not taking drugs, they are. Yeah. Especially women, it's kind of a taboo situation. So I allowed him to kind of, he told me this is what I needed to win. So I took the drugs. But like I said, I had that really bad meet in 2018 and I was suicidal, and I was taking more drugs then than I had previously ever taken. And mentally, I was shot. And just the fact that I didn't perform as well as I wanted to or needed to, and I was taking so many drugs, I felt like everything, like this was counterintuitive, like to who I was. Yeah. I'm taking these drugs. I'm not getting the result. I don't feel good about this. I'm not in alignment with this. So what can I do? How can I maximize this? But, I feel like there's a diminishing return, especially, depending on who the person is and how you feel about things. But I felt like I was forced to take these drugs to win. Yeah. And instead of that, I just kind of I realized that maybe I don't need this. I just need to maximize everything else. If I had taken Tren and like all this stuff, I could have squatted 600 pounds. And that's as, coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? But I didn't want to do that because I knew that mentally I'm not really stable. And I didn't realize how unstable I was until we added in PEDs, until we added in drugs. And then at that point, I've already committed to being the absolute very best. So if this is what is necessary, I'm just going to have to live with this mental instability. I'm going to have to figure out, I canceled out the whole world. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't have friends. I didn't do anything because I was so scared of who I was. You know what I'm saying? Like my attitude, my anger issues, all these things, I kind of kept to myself. I hermited, and I realized that wasn't good for me, right? So just the mental aspect of taking more drugs was detrimental to me in terms of my mental health, my recovery, and everything else. Even though in theory it shouldn't be, right?
Well, it's going to put you under more stress too. Yep. So now you got to recover from that stress.
Yeah. And so I realized just truly that was something that I felt like I couldn't handle as well. And if I can't handle and show up mentally where I need to, I just need to be able to move this weight. So whatever I need to do here, I need to be able to move this weight, but I need to be able to be okay with who I am, right? And so for chicks, truly, there is no edit undo button, right? So I've been a kind of minimalist when it comes to drugs. I didn't really want to take drugs in the first place, but I took the drugs long enough to get where I wanted to go, to be my vehicle. And then that was the main reason once I hit the top, I wanted to come off of them.
I assume after that meet, that was the clusterfuck, right?
Yeah.
Then you dialed back. I
met Trevor.
Yeah. So you dialed all that back. So you dialed the training back, you dialed the PEDs back. Yep. You put yourself in a more optimal environment.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
And because of that, it's easier to recover. Training's easier, right? Where you might not, in your mindset, you may not think that you're full throttling, but what's harder though? What's harder? It's easy to full throttle on everything and think that you're moving forward. It's easy. It's hard to be optimal.
Yeah.
That takes more mental discipline than putting the pedal down.
Absolutely. And that's what I think a lot of people talk about too is, I'll do whatever it takes. And they're talking about they'll blast the drugs. They'll take the drugs, but then you won't sleep. Then you won't eat. Then you won't do the actual foundational things that you actually need to be the best. You just want to force the drugs or push the drugs. And that's not really how it works, right? So for me, I truly felt like to be the absolute very best version of me and to be able to squat as much and do as much with as minimal amount, it required every single aspect of I had to be on point.
And you were at a different time there too, because basically you're dependent upon bro science, for all that, where, in today's world, there's companies like Merrick Health,
God, yeah.
So I'm going to do my plug for Merrick Health, right? So there's merrickhealth.com, and they do work with women too, by the way. And that will help to optimize the hormones. They'll do the blood panels, they'll do the blood profiles, link in the description. But, the reason why I partnered with them is because of cases like this. Yes, there's the cases of, the old dudes that have diminishing testosterone levels, and doesn't everybody have diminishing testosterone levels now? And he had the plastic,
life will do that too.
whatever it is, but the women I tell all these stories about how the guy will go into the doctor, and no matter what he goes in the doctor for,
if he looks testosterone.
Well, no. If he goes into the doctor and they want prescribed, no, it's the last thing they're ever going to do. But if you go into the doctor and you're a little jacked, everything that is wrong is because of the steroids. Everything. I can only imagine, a female going to the doctor that looks like the shit that you would, you can probably tell me.
Yeah, word for word.
Yeah, so you walk into the doctor's office because you have a cold, whatever it is, a strain, whatever. Boom, you show up. What's the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth?
Oh, it's steroid induced. Everything is from steroids. And even before I started taking drugs, I competed several meets, USAPL and stuff, and I got drug tested every single time because I was so aggressive. I was just always so aggressive. And when I was still natty, I went to the doctor and just for a cold or for something, it's like, are you taking steroids, ma'am? And it's like, no. But then they wouldn't take no for an answer. There's no way that you look like, especially in the South, and just like very, very, steroids are bad. Like I grew up Southern Baptist, so you love God and steroids are the devil.
Yeah.
My dad had the steroid conversation with me before he had any kind of other conversation with me. Especially, I love the gym so much. We didn't talk about birds and bees, but we talked about steroids are bad. You should never do steroids. But so it was definitely a taboo thing. And so even from then, when I was like natty, and I was still just I was a normal looking jack girl, but it was just really uncommon in that area. Everybody always associated it with steroids. And so kind of when to cross that line, that was for me something that was it was pivotal for me. Because once I decided I was going to cross that line, there was no turning back. And I was going to give every single ounce of my being to doing what I wanted to do. Because this is something for me that it wasn't just okay, yeah, I'm just going to try a cycle of this. It was like, okay, this is something that's kind of against what I want to do and who I feel like I am. So I'm going to maximize this for absolutely everything it's worth. And before I started taking drugs, I squatted, I think, right under 400. I had pulled right under 4, and I'd benched 225 as a natty girl, right? I think a lot of people miss that aspect because they want to jump on drugs really quick and don't build a base. But I started there. Those were my numbers first. Then once I got a little bit of help, then I was like, oh, now she's on drugs. And I was like, yeah, well, you thought what you thought. Yeah. Now you know. So, that's just one of those things. But definitely the steroid conversation was, and just the whole taboo-ness around it. And even still, some people back in hometown or anything like that, well, the only reason why she was strong is because she took steroids. And it's like, okay, but everybody's always going to have something to say about anything that you do, right?
Those people were still going to say that, even if you stayed clean the whole time and squatted 100 pounds less.
Yeah.
They're still going to say it was because of the steroids. That's the problem, and it's way, I I bitch about the problems that men have with it, but it's way, way worse, for the women that have that. You're still around the sport as an announcer and coach and all this other stuff. Where do you see a lot of the women today making mistakes or getting on too soon or, taking too much and
getting on too soon, and then just taking, I'm not an expert by any means, but just taking such strong compounds where there's definitely lasting results. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love powerlifting. I love training. Training is my entire life. I plan to, as long as I live. I don't know how old I'm going to end up being. I've been pretty mean to my body, right? But as long as I live, I intend to train. I intend to train hard. But there's just a lot of things that you still got to go to the grocery store. You still got to interact with other people. And so when you take these hard drugs, you get the result you want for sure. But then you still have to do your normal life. And so doing normal life and having to shave your beard every single day, or, you know, losing hair, your voice deepens. It changes the way that people see you. And some people that are in the sport or in fitness, they understand and they're like, oh, respect. It doesn't really matter. It's just part of, you know, part of the whole situation. But normal people, quote unquote, normal people definitely see you differently. And a lot of people say, oh, that's, you know, that's gross, or that's a cheater or something like that, you know, to that regard. And so I see a lot of girls now that their first thing is they want to get on the gear so they can get strong. But you need to build a base first before you decide to, you know, that's just the icing on the cake. If you have the main things that you need, the components, get strong, train for 10 years, train for, you know, enough time where you have some good experience instead of training for 2 or 3 years, hopping on gear, because then you're going to have more and more and more. And then that's going to give you worse and worse kind of, you know, side effects and stuff. The more you have to pump that. I mean, I've seen girls now, and it's like, pulling 350 and taking crazy compounds. And I'm like, but for what? You know what I'm saying? So for what? And so I think people just, you know, say that steroids are just, I mean, that's the norm. So we just hop on them immediately and don't build anything to start with. And so that's where I think we mess up.
I was going to say, is that they just don't know any better.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, I commend you for speaking about it.
Absolutely.
Because who is?
Yeah.
Right. So if let's say they don't know any better. Why is it that they don't know any better?
Because nobody's putting this out here. Because women are scared to even talk about steroids or using steroids because of the repercussions that come out of this. But if nothing else, I would love to just be a voice here and say, I've been down that road. It's not a pretty road. It'll get you what you want, if that's what you want. But there's also other ways to go about it. There's other things to do. And you can get blood tests. You can get things and do it in a more optimal or reasonable way. But the thing is, just people don't know that. And then when I have a client, because I coach and I have like a, you know, full roster, most of my athletes are natural, which is pretty crazy to me, right? But I'm such an advocate for, okay, if you bring up the idea that you want to get on gear or you want to start drugs, you're going to get on the phone with me. We're going to have a conversation. Why do you want to do this? Have you researched this? Have you read this? Have you da-da-da-da? And if you're not ready, you're an adult. People are adults. They can make their own choices, but I'm not going to encourage it. I'm definitely not going to, you know, like have any kind of, I'm not going to let it happen if it's up to me, because if you're not ready or if you don't understand that this is a commitment in the way that it is, I'm not going to let you do that, because I feel like so many people are just, especially coaches, it makes you look better when your athletes' numbers are higher and higher, right? So you've got all these world records and stuff under your belt. But at what expense? That, you know, once your athlete, once they get to a point of no return or they don't feel good about themselves, then you just throw them away. The way that I coach is I want to teach. And I think that's one reason why, you know, being here just means so much to me, because I want to teach.
Yes.
I want to be able to take my experiences. I wouldn't change a single one. I wouldn't change a single thing about how any of my, you know, just journey has progressed, because it's made me the person that I am today, but it's also given me the experience that I can now share with other people what not to do, right? And so like the hard training where you break your entire body, okay, yeah, maybe we can do that, like, you know, on occasion, but it's not an everyday thing. Maybe we can displace some of that, you know, the discipline, we can do all the things. Maybe we can use the drugs whenever it makes sense, but it's about teaching people through your own experiences, and that's just what I love and I live for.
Yeah, well, training and, you know, powerlifting training, it doesn't matter if it's powerlifting, any type of training that's serious and structure it's a house of cards, right? And that's just one card, and it's the easiest one to play, right? It's when you're talking about the all-in, that's the easiest all-in card you can play. Granted, there's moral decisions, there's things that go into that, but for most of the all-in people, or think they're all-in people, it's the easiest one to play, where there's all these other cards, right? So there's the training card, you know, which we talked a little bit about. You kind of tapped on the journaling and the goal setting and the visualization. That's a card. You know, the nutrition's a card. You know, there's all these other cards, but that takes more effort, more time, more discipline, more research, more self-reflection. And it's so much easier for them to go that route, say, that's all in, and miss all these other things, which if you're going to be the champion, right, or whatever you want to call, you know, the best of your best, and you leave cards unplayed, you know, then are you really the best of your best? You know, if you're only playing the dirty cards, you know what I'm saying, then you're never going to reach your full potential anyhow. So it makes more sense to me to spend more time working on those other cards first. And then once they're all laid out, you know, what's your training look like? What's the nutrition look like? What's the hydration look like? What's the visualization look? What's all this look like? Oh, it's not even, you don't do any of that?
Oh, that's like, you're like 50% there. Okay. Well, let's make that 90 to 100%. And then, because even just running a cycle of gear and you're not doing any of the other variables, yeah, sure, you might see increases. You might get stronger, but not to the, like, I went from a 225 bench and I competed not too terribly long afterwards, but played everything right? Because I was committed to it then. I was fully committed all in. I benched, I think, 276 at my next meet. I mean, and that's like kind of unheard of, because I didn't gain a ton of body weight or anything like that. But it's just because all the cards we played it right. So if you want to get just a little bit, sure. But if you want to actually maximize your performance and experience, it requires all the little things and the details first. And just, you know, for me, I definitely accredit, like, it was the systems. It was the systems and the goals that I set in place that just, I work backwards from everything. If this is the goal that I want to achieve, how do I do that? If I know that I can't really mentally handle some of these hard drugs, I really, really, really have to put all my emphasis, as much as I possibly can, on the everything else. And so the visualization, the meditation, and just figuring out how to do it, you know, because like people will say, oh, they have a goal, but how are you working towards that goal? People say they want to make $100,000. That used to be my goal, is I want to make $100,000 in a year. But then they don't, okay, how much are you making a month? How much are you have to set what I need to do. So this gives you a tangible goal for A, then to you go to B, then you just keep on moving up, right? But if you don't have any of these goals and you're just, oh, I want to make $100,000, but you don't have any markers, you're not going to get there. So just my success, largely I credit just to those systems that I put in place, not the drugs, not the training. It was the mentality and just like the all around effort that was applied everywhere else.
Well, that's what I love about your podcast, when I went through and listened to, because there's short tidbits, 5-10 minutes, some like 20 minutes, stuff like that. But it's all the low hanging fruit, where what people don't understand is sometimes you still got to reach for the low hanging fruit, right? So all those little things, like the goal setting, you know, that you're talking about, where you went out from what you want to be and then work backwards, you know, it's vital. You know, I personally don't like the word goal. I like objective. I think goals are shortcoming.
Absolutely.
You know, because what if you hit it, but you could have done more? You know, so there's that whole thing. But I get it. It's so everybody relates to the word in different ways. The journaling's a big one. You know, talk a little bit more about that. Like, how did you use it when you were competing? How did you refine it? And then how do you use it now? Not just for the training, but for business life and everything else.
So truly, a lot of the things that I put in place for, you know, to achieve that goal, I still do every single day, but just in a little different way, right? So I started out just writing. It would be after training. I'd be like, how I felt about the session, what it made me, you know, what could I do better? What was something that I did well? And then what was something that I, you know, needed to improve on? And so writing out the piece that what I did well that day was really important to me, because I'm very, very hard on myself, even still, you know, and like I said, I did 475, but I didn't do it for 10. So it wasn't enough. And so you beat yourself up with that, but identifying one thing that you have done well in the session, or even one thing you've done well for the day. I think that is something I even still do now, which is super important, because on occasion, we need to give ourselves a pat on the back, just because if you're always beating yourself up, you're never going to have anything to really just keep moving forward on.
What are you grateful for?
Yeah. Oh, I gratitude list. I still every day gratitude list. What am I thankful for? I'm thankful to have a functioning body. I'm thankful to be able to move this kind of weight. Like, and I used to write down, and so I just kind of got more refined with it. But as I got later through the training, I began to write after training, but then I'd write at nighttime too. So I'd write just all my thoughts and everything that just really was up here, because a lot of times I feel like people can't sleep, especially when you have something big hanging on the horizon. There's a lot of things you can't really sleep, and especially if you're setting yourself an early bedtime. I put down all my thoughts on paper, and then I shut the journal and just went to bed. And it just really made me feel a lot less heavy. And so just mentally, I was able to clear my head, put it on paper, and then it was done. So that was the day. And so I still do that even in life now. Before I go to bed, this is my little hack. Before I go to bed every single night, I write down my schedule for the next day. What time am I going to wake up? What am I going to eat in the morning? What kind of supplements am I taking? Am I doing my cardio? Where am I doing my cardio? How long is the time it's going to take for me to get from here to the gym? I hate being late. Mm-hmm. Being late, I think, is so disrespectful, because you're taking someone else's time and you're saying it's not valuable to you in the same way that yours is. So being late is a hard no for me. So I make sure I allot times for everything. And so sometimes, obviously, life doesn't go as planned. Mm-hmm. Things take a little longer. There's traffic or whatever else. But before I go to bed, I lay out a schedule of the things I need to do for the following day. And then I set task lists. And so normally I try to get at least one task on the task list done for the following day. So that way I'll wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm already ahead. I know what I'm going to be doing. And just, there's a sense of, there's no uncertainty, right? I think a lot of doubt comes from, we're uncertain about what's going to happen. We're uncertain about if we can or can't do something and things of that nature. I know that I can do anything and everything, right? And it's because I've set myself up to do it. I don't never know the timeline, but I know that I'm going to do it. I'm going to achieve the things. And checking one thing off the list for the following day, it totally sets you into a different mental space because you feel like you're ahead. Mm-hmm. And then I make my bed every single morning. And that was something that, I'm pretty structured, pretty routine person. I like to make the bed, but I listened to that podcast about, the Navy SEAL that said, okay, make your bed every single day. And when I started doing that, everything started changing. Making the bed, writing the list, doing the things, all these little things that don't have anything to do with actually moving weight, because I can move weight like anybody's business. I think I can move weight pretty much just as good as anybody else, but it's all about that mental aspect and that mental fortitude and having the commitment to sit down and it sounds easy to journal, right? It sounds easy to write out your thoughts, but allotting the time to do that. Life is wild. There's all kinds of stuff going on all the time, but I'd plan out that time. And this is a hard commitment to myself. And if you're not able to do a hard commitment to yourself, what makes you think that you're going to be able to be committed to anybody else or any other goals or, any other objectives? Because if you second guessing on yourself, if you're not committed to what you need to do, you're not all in.
How long did it take you to, and when you're writing down your thoughts at the end of the night, how long did it take you to be real with yourself to actually put down the thoughts that you didn't want to put down? Because it sounds easy, but it's a whole nother thing to actually write what you're thinking and be okay with, and first off, nobody's going to read it, right? Yeah. But it's fucked up, right? Yeah. Because you don't want to write a lot of times what you should write. Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to come to grips with being able to do that?
I'll honestly probably say 2 or 3 weeks. I started when I really committed to doing this. I started and I kind of, in theory, I want to write a book. I'm going to write a book. I changed the word choice. That way I have to commit to it. But I saved some of these because I was going to use them for the future. And so it started out kind of, curated. I was like, this is what I should say. This is what I should be thinking. But then I was like, that's fake. That's fake. And that's what, people think that everything is always pretty and shiny. And that's how the champions are made, of pretty and shiny. But the fact of the matter is champions are made out of the nitty gritty dirty of the hard stuff that I didn't think I could do this, but then I did, or I don't feel like I'm where I need to be. So I'm going to have to make a change. And so I realized pretty early on, I was like, that's fake. And that's not authentically how this is feeling to me. And so the one thing that I think is, just true about me is I'm going to be real. I'm going to be real and I'm going to be honest. And so I felt like I needed to just change that. So it was in alignment with who I was and just make it real and raw. And then the more real and raw I got, the better I became, because I was unleashing, just putting those negative thoughts or putting those thoughts that weren't necessarily me at my very best. I was putting them on paper and actualizing them and just expressing this is where I'm struggling. This is how I feel. It makes you realize that everything is changeable, that nothing is permanent. So if you're actually speaking about these things, you can do something about it. Versus if you never realize these things, or if you just stifle them down, to the point where it's just training is your only form of therapy and release, it doesn't really work out a lot of times as best for you. But if you're talking to yourself and you're being real, then you know how to work from there. So I figured it out early-ish on, but you know, I can still do better with it. I can still do better with it because we always want to be the knight in shining armor. We always want to look put together and collected, like we've got it all together, but it's okay not to.
We all, you know, it never stops, right? Yeah. So everybody wants to be real to the world, but they can't be real to themselves.
Yeah.
So you can't be real to the world until you're real with yourself first, 100%. Right? So if you can't even write down your own thoughts, you know, pro and con, then you can't be real with yourself, you know, and that's important, you know, especially when there's so much shit going on and we're all broke.
Yeah.
You know, that's always, you can't break what's already broken, right? So it's like, fuck it, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I'm already broke. What are you going to do?
And then it also, like, when you're real with yourself, it makes you more relatable to other people. Because I think we all feel this way, that we have to be this perfect person or we have to be presentable in whatever ways. But we all feel broken, no matter, you know, some of us a little more than others. That's the powerlifters, right? Like, that's how we express. But I think people relate when you're honest and you're, like, real about your struggles and real about, you know, say the PEDs or say these different things. When you're real and open about that kind of stuff, you're more relatable and it makes more of an impact. And so that's what I've always wanted to do from the very beginning, was to make a bigger impact and to make anybody realize that I'm nobody special. I'm nothing special. I just really decided that I was going to do this thing and I did it, right? Ups, downs, sideways, however, you know, it was not a linear kind of situation. I wanted to be done way before I was, but the thing is, it doesn't work that way. And so when you're real like that, I faced a lot of, like, I did the 2018 US Open and I crapped the bed. I did another meet in November of that same year in North Carolina, and I did well, but the third attempt deadlift was what I needed to secure the highest all-time Wilks, and I missed. And I wasn't the kind of person, oh, Stacy, what happened? Oh, well, I didn't have my foot 1 degree to the left and the sun was in my eyes and the mat was on the floor and it rolled up. I'm not going to give you an excuse. You know what I said? I wasn't strong enough yet. Meaning I wasn't there yet, but I'm going to do everything in my power to get it next time. So many people have so many excuses for everything in the world, right? And that's just fake news. That's all that is. Yeah. Is, you know, you weren't strong enough. No matter if, you know, it was just on the day or whatever else. I never put an excuse out there because it is what it is, and you just move forward with it, right? So that's just always how I've been, and just trying to move forward with everything.
The realness, I'm gonna define what you said a little bit better. With the being real, I don't look at that as making a bigger impact. Being real, because to me, a bigger impact is wide, right? So people can make a big impact by having 3.5 million followers on Instagram, but it's not deep, right? The fakest people in the world have the biggest impact, right? The realest people in the world have the deepest impact,
absolutely,
right? So that surface impact isn't going to change anybody.
Yeah.
It's going to entertain them. That deeper impact will change people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, it will forever. You know, it can be a pivot point, you know, that cascades, you know, into that person's life, which could change their children's life. You know, and it can be generational.
Yeah. And that's truly, I love the way that you phrase that, you know, just the deeper impact. And that's what I want to do, totally and completely, because had I continued to train with the absolute disregard for anything else other than, you know, just moving weight, I probably would have 1 million followers on Instagram, because people love to watch an absolute maniac, you know. I mean, and training wise, I mean, I've never seen someone train to the intensity, a female at least, like, you know, maybe very few and far in between, because I cared about it more than anything in the world, like more than absolutely anything. And so had I continued to train that way, people love to watch.
Yeah. What do you mean that's what you want to do? You're already doing it.
Oh, well, I mean, if I had continued to train in that way, I'd have 1 million followers, right? But I decided to optimize the approach, right? And so it kept me reeled in. So people don't like to watch just kind of squats that aren't RP 12.5, or I'm not bleeding from the head, where I don't have to bash myself. And, you know, like, people don't, it's not as entertaining. But I decided to make a choice to make a deeper impact rather than to just get, you know, all the just low hanging fruit, right? So had I decided to just be bigger more than anything, but I like that deep. I want to change lives, right? And, like, it sounds so cliche, by moving weight, I'm changing lives, but it's just, I want to show people that anything can be done, that absolutely anything can be done. And it's just all about your approach.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have shown people that, you know, so, I mean, have you stopped to think about that?
Not usually, because even still, there's still always more work to be done, right? And so that's what the podcast is for. And the podcast is for...
It's like your squat, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm working on. That's one of the things that I'm working on is just being more present, appreciating the little wins, because those are things that, you know, reflecting, I should have done a little differently, right? But I'm happy with, you know, how
would you have, though?
How would I have? Just to stop and be like, wow, that's actually great work. You're doing a great job, Stacy. Like, look at how far you've come instead of just looking at the shortcoming, looking at this is not enough versus comparing it to where I began, you know? And just so I definitely had the mentality always that I just had to do more. But then now I'm like, if you just look at it a little bit differently, it might have changed I might have been even better, you know, just if I'd appreciated the little wins along the way, because that's something that I try to teach all my athletes and anybody that I interact with is that, you know, because I had a lot of bad days in the gym just because my expectation was here. And even if my output was good, it wasn't good enough. I threw several chalk bowls. I mean, I did a lot of things, right?
Tell me about one of the worst days that you can remember.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll tell you.
One's got to pop up immediately.
Number one, it was my last heavy deadlift before the Arnold. So I was living with Trevor. Every aspect of my life was being controlled and lining up. I didn't cheat on my diet. I didn't do anything out of deviation. So to me, I'm doing every single thing that I can, checking the boxes. We go to do my last heavy pull, and it was supposed to be 500. And I'd pulled 500 multiple times. It was kind of not a routine thing. I had to actually, you know, I had to work for it, but it was something that wasn't crazy to me. It wasn't asinine. So we go into the gym, and I'm going to pull my top heavy pull. It doesn't budge. And when I'm talking about it doesn't budge, like it's not even like okay. No. It doesn't break the floor. And I'm with Trevor, and Trevor, he doesn't know quite at this moment in time how to deal with me. And when I say deal with me, just like, I'm going to need a minute, right? Like I'm going to need a minute. Like I don't need, it's going to be okay. You're going to be able to, no. I need a minute or maybe 7. He didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. It was just one of those things. I took my belt, and I would love to say that I delicately placed it. I did not. I chunked it. I walked out because I trained in Trevor's garage, right? So I walked out the garage in the middle of this nice neighborhood, just super suburban. I walked out, and I'm just power walking, and I'm just angry. I walked out, and I'm just going. I hated everything. I was mad at everything. Everything was everybody else's fault too. This was Trevor's fault.
Yeah.
Somehow, because I've been doing everything right. So this was Trevor's fault that I missed this deadlift. I can do this. This is stupid. This is the program. It's the plan. This ain't me. And I just was mad, and I was walking, stomping around this neighborhood, and all these little women looking out the window like, what is going on? Because I was shirtless. I come back. I walk back in. I grab my belt. And as I'm putting my belt on, because I was about to do it again, Trevor's like, we should try it again, in his little fragile, you know, like kind of way. And I was already in the midst of doing it without his permission or not. And I'm talking about I gripped and ripped it, because Trevor's a very technical guy, and he's a good coach. He was a good coach for me, especially because all I knew was just move it, grip and rip. I never had the best technique. That's why a lot of times people are like, oh, Stacy coaches, I ain't never seen her do a good deadlift before. And I'm like, well, I learned, right? I learned more after I got done training, like to figure out how I could coach and better apply. But so I went through, and I'm talking about I gripped and ripped it. It was the ugliest thing that's probably ever been done. It never even made it to Instagram because it was so hideous, and I was so mad at it, right? It was RP 12.5. I put it down, and Trevor was like, okay, well, that's done. Like, that was pretty much it. And he told me, you know, I lost my lats on the first one or whatever else. But the truth of the matter was I was scared. And I don't like saying that because I'm not scared of anything. I'm the fearless leader, right? But I was just scared because I had been doing so much. I've been working so hard. My back had been bothering me a little bit, you know, just the aches and pains and stuff. And I just kind of, I remember when I approached the bar, I was like, all right, I hope this goes okay. You know, like if you walk up to a 500-pound bar, 1,000-pound, whatever, any kind of, whatever it is, and you're scared or you have a little bit of doubt, it's going to eat you. It's going to eat you for lunch. You know, it took my lunch money. And so that's a real thing, that any kind of those little thoughts that you have, I needed all of it to be on board with me. I needed to be 100% all in mentally, physically, the whole 9 yards. And when I was unbeatable. And like, that to me really showed me that like I can do anything, but I can't doubt myself. And so I remember having that terrible training day. I didn't speak to Trevor, even though I figured it out and I got it. I didn't speak to Trevor for the rest of the day. I didn't speak, I don't think, the entire rest of the day, 'cause I was so disappointed. So disappointed. And I was like, okay, I just got to pull probably like 50 more pounds in this. No big deal in 2 weeks. So, that sounds like a tall order, right? Like I've got to lose 20 pounds and I've got to pull 50 more pounds. Done.
What did you do within those 2 weeks to be able to change the mindset going into the meet?
I wrote and I visualized. I turned the dial up even harder on like the realizations. And the mantra that I always had was can, am, will. And so can means you're capable. Am, I'm going to do it. And will is what you're going to do moving forward. So I just told myself I'm the best in the world. I wrote every single day. This is something that not a ton of people know. But even just before training or in the morning, I wrote like I was in school and you get in trouble and you write it over and over again. I would write 100 times. I've still got sheets of paper. I am the best in the world. I am the strongest woman in the world. And so I just leaned into that. And I'm talking about obsessively because I'm a pretty obsessive person. And so I just obsessively would write to myself these phrases, these words, can, am, will. I've got this. I mean, just I turned the dial up to a level that I didn't even know was possible mentally. So that's what I did. And I recovered because the training, the hard part was already done. So I just had to recover and I had to get my head together. I had to get my head right because I've been working all this time for what? For me to go out there and doubt myself? That's not going to give me anything good. So I turned up the notch and I told Trevor, I didn't even, so this was kind of an ongoing joke. And also I definitely had, even still, a little bit of an ego, right? I wanted to be done in 8. So I don't typically, I have a history of, I miss my third attempt deadlifts, right? So I go 8 for 9 or 7 for 9, something like that. Because if I go too hard on the last pull, don't make it. I told Trevor, I said, I don't even want 9 attempts. I want to be done in 8. And he's, like I said, a conservative guy. He's like, okay, all right. But he was on board. He was like, okay, I get what you're going with. And save some energy, save some fatigue. So that's what we did. So on the day that when I competed, we opened with 5. And he told me, he's like, pull it and I'll give it to you. Whatever we need, pull it and I'll give it to you. And it was ballsy. The 500, it moved. But I could tell it wasn't like my best pull I've ever done. But we went for it. We put 550 on the bar, which was what I needed. Did it on the second attempt. And I weighed my third. So we got done in 8. And that was it. That was all it took.
Walk me through your visualization process.
Okay. So just at nighttime, especially before I go to bed, I just close my eyes and I just really try to get myself, I had to control my breathing. So just get into almost like a good state where I'm mentally, I feel good. I feel calm. My breathing's on point. It's very routine. And then I just would see whatever it is. You know, if I'm looking at myself, I'm feeling it while I'm doing it. I'm watching myself unrack the squat. I control my breathing. I'm just thinking about every single aspect and just visually I'm watching the pictures of what I believe is going to happen. And physically I can almost feel it in my body. And so just I would sit there and I would just, usually I'd lay in bed or sometimes I'd be against a wall. Like if there's some videos out there from me at the last meet that I did and my head's just against the wall. I'm not beating it against anything, but I'm just close my eyes and my head's against the wall. I'm just standing there and I'm visualizing, I'm seeing what is going to happen, almost like a premonition before it actually happens. And just that to me, once I get done, once I open my eyes and, wake myself up, it felt like a completely different state, right? The meditative visualization state, I felt like it was already done. Just truly like my body had been primed for it. And that's really how I went through it.
When you first started to do that, though, you're not seeing anything, so how did you practice getting to the point where you could start to actually see what you wanted to see instead of seeing like the barbell flipping up and blowing a knee out?
I never saw anything bad. Yeah. I never saw anything bad. I never made room for it, right? I knew that all of this was a potential, just like anything bad could happen always. Yeah. But instead of putting my energy into seeing something bad or to seeing the negative outcomes, there's 100,000 more negative outcomes that could happen than the one thing that could happen right. So I just really focused on, I put all my eggs in one basket. Even when I just first started doing the visualization, all I saw was me winning. Like I started visualizing, like maybe not as intense, but even from probably in like 2016-ish, I just saw myself stand up with the weight. And that was what I just really focused on, because whatever you put your energy to, that's what's going to grow. And so I knew how crazy all of this was. I knew that I could get, I remember in 2018, I was having a lot of struggle with my bicep, and just like for being a little girl, my bench was pretty nasty, and I had, a pretty decent technique in terms of I had good leg drive off the chest, but I would get to a point where I'd had to just drop it and collapse at the chest to fight that pain. I knew that just when I competed, I was going to either get the lift or my pec was going to absolutely snap and pop. I realized that once I thought about that, oh, my pec is going to snap, the pain hurt worse, right? And so because we're thinking about that, so I just always leaned in. I'm not the person that's like, oh, be positive with everything. You got to be honest about how your body's feeling and whatnot. But when I'm putting these intentional thoughts in my mind, they're all about the outcome that I want. Because if something bad happens, okay, cool, that's not the outcome that I planned for or visualized and saw, but it's the outcome we have, and we can work with that. But there's only one way to win, and so that's how I wanted to get there.
Yeah, for the people that are listening, if they're going to start, right? I like to say, well, you already are. It's called daydreaming. Yeah. So you already are. You just want to try to put a lasso around it and control it a little bit more. But while they're intentionally trying to do this, I think they need to understand that while they're getting into a relaxed state, those thoughts, the not so good thoughts, are natural to come. Yeah. Just let them go. I think that's the first thing, is to be able to, okay, there it is, there it goes. Yeah. Not to say, okay, there it is, and then think about it. It's not time for that. No. So let it go. And then over a period of time, they'll come less frequently. Yeah. But it would be a false assumption to think you're just going to lay down and you're going to have all these positive thoughts, which none of us still do, right? Yeah. You still wrestle with, that's part of it all, is wrestling with it and finding the balance and letting the stronger thoughts win, over the other ones. But it's always there. I think some people end up getting frustrated. Okay. They want to visualize, they want to meditate, but then they realize they're too stressed to even do it. Just sit the fuck down. Yeah. Breathe. Start somewhere.
Create an environment for it, right? Because if you try to visualize in, a stressful workplace or something like that, with everything going on with people, just a lot of outside stressors, or say a cluttered environment, or say something that is not really good for you, you're not going to be able to get in that state, or you're not going to be able to focus. You're going to get frustrated because you can't get there. You can't see what's, but create the environment and just make the time for it, right? Because I think a lot of times we'll tack something on to the end of our day. Oh, I'm going to start writing, or I'm going to start visualizing. And it's just almost an afterthought. Put some intentionality behind it. Create the environment. Have, a quiet room, or set it up where it's, I do a champion mindset transformation program, which is something where I just pretty much try to teach people how to visualize, how to walk through these things. And one of the things is, if you're spending time reading or you're spending time writing, it's not a write this and then do something else, be distracted. It's actually a lot this time every single day to do this thing. And so once you put some intentionality, like we said, behind it, I feel like, yeah, sure, you may still struggle because it's foreign, and you may still struggle just because your thoughts are a little bit heavier than other people's or anything like that. But if you continue to get better with it and give yourself that room to do that, I think it makes it a little easier.
With you're leaning into the personal development space, there's things that you've learned and picked up since you've competed that, looking back, you would think, I should have been doing that. Then what are some of those things?
Relationships and creating and cultivating relationships. So say I was just really transactional, I'd say. And that's something that I still feel in a way about. But transactional of, okay, if somebody's spotting me, somebody's there to help me, that's cool, that's great, and I appreciate that. But I didn't really reach out and continue to build relationships because I'm so busy focused on, these are my food, this is my meals. I'm not checking on Eddie. I'm not checking on, Chris, or I'm not checking on the people that are looking out for me because I'm so selfish in a way of, my training is the most important thing. My food is the most important thing. And so I'd say that I didn't do a good job, or I could have done a better job of just maintaining relationships or just putting forth effort into that. I didn't feel like I had the energy or the time or the effort to be willing to put that towards other people. And so that to me is something now that I believe everything is about your relationships and your connections with other people. You can go squat 8,000 pounds and that's great. But if you don't have anybody that actually is in your life that you can share it with because you've created that connection and relationship with, it makes it mean a little less, right? Yeah, sure, we did the thing and that's our badge of honor for the rest of our entire life. But it's also about, experiencing that with other people and kind of going through that journey together. So that's something that I'd say just for most people in, a normal life or a real situation of personal development, we need relationships and connections, meaningful connections in our lives to kind of, get through a lot of situations. And so that's something that I didn't put any emphasis, 0% emphasis on. I didn't care anything about friends. I didn't care anything about relationships. All I cared about was myself and just if I could get from point A to point B. And just, I realize that now.
Do you think that really would have made a difference though, as far as your objective?
As far as the objective? No. I mean, truly, because I could have done it in a reasonable way, right? Maybe I'm not going out and partying with people because I don't drink. I haven't drank in years, right?
Yes.
But it's like, maybe I wasn't spending 3 hours a day with someone, no, but I could have sent a text. I could have, just been a little bit more accommodating to other people. And not that I'm not polite or kind, but it's just that little bit extra that I could have done, an extra couple 5-10 minutes out my day to look out for somebody else, that it wouldn't have made a difference in terms of my output or my outcome.
Yeah. Would you say that's more of a regret than something that would have, made it better?
I try to say that I don't regret absolutely anything in life because now I understand this, right? And had I been doing that all along, it wouldn't be something that I could look back on and say, oh, I can improve here. So I just continue to do the same thing, which is great. But also I feel like I have a lot more now that I can give more to other people. And that's one thing with like my coaching and everything. I'm able to, I think, be such an effective coach because I understand and value the importance of the connections as well versus I didn't then. So I definitely think that just, I don't regret. And people that like have been with me and that did support me all along, I think they understood and they understood mentally where I was at. And now I do everything in my power to take care of other people. I reach out to people. I do the things. And so I don't know, being able to look back and say I was wrong or being able to look back and say I could have done this better. I appreciate that more than doing it right the whole time because people that screw up or people that get hurt or people that, can come back from anything or make a change and just change your behavior. I think that's really a true PR in itself, right? So no regrets.
Yeah. No, I kind of, what I'm trying to wrap my head around is when you're in that space and you kind of said it, there's really there's no room, right? Because you have this selfish endeavor, which you're going to do no matter what. So it doesn't matter who the coach is, who the friends are, who the gym is, what the bar is. It doesn't fucking matter.
No.
All those things come and go.
Yeah.
Friends come and go. I mean, a lot of things just come and go.
The gym that I trained at, that is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah.
Where, but as we mature and become bigger as people, I think we just create more space. Yeah. It's not like we have this limited amount of space and there's 100% in there.
Yeah.
And that what we look back and think, well, out of that 100%, I should have given 5%. And that's a limited way to think.
Yeah.
Where I think what really happens is that space goes from here to here.
Yeah, I totally
agree. So that 100% can still be that full 100%, but then there's extra room and you have to grow as an individual, learn from your adversities, learn from your mistakes, and be able to look back in hindsight and say, you know what, maybe, and take accountability, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Take the accountability and say, you know what, maybe I was a bitch. Maybe I was an asshole. Maybe I was a dickhead,
Absolutely.
And maybe I did use it as an excuse to be able to keep all the fuckers away, because I didn't want to deal with them. But maybe the energy I was using to push everybody away, that same energy percentage
could have been used a little differently.
It could have been used differently. And I don't think that's part of that all in thing that I'm talking about. I think you can't really get a really good grasp of that unless you filled that space and realize, you know what, I need more space.
Yeah.
then how do I find more space? Then you look into some of the other things that you're helping people with now, the personal development, the organization of time, the setting clear objectives, all those type of things. Are there other things that you look back and say, I wish I would have been doing this at the time? The question also bears in mind, you didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. So I understand what you're saying with the regrets. It's hard to regret something that you didn't know you were actually doing.
Yeah.
You can look back and say, but you didn't know.
Yeah. Now having the awareness for sure. I mean, I wish, if going back to all this, even playing ball, like the importance of nutrition, the importance of sleep. We know these things, but we don't really know these things until you get to the top echelon. But I wish hydration, I wish that some of these things, I wish I had known about all of that. I mean, I wish I would have known about so much more beforehand, but truly just, I think it's really important what you're saying about creating more space. And it's that is the biggest thing, and just creating the curiosity to continue to learn more and learn how to refine. But just accountability wise, I wish I had paid more attention to people and allowed, not been so cold, not been quite as selfish. I'll say that I was selfish. I'll say that I'm still selfish, because I think to make it in any kind of aspect, you have to be in some way selfish. If you're, these are my goals, these are my objectives, these are my boundaries. These are the non-negotiables for me. But I say that I could have done these a little bit differently. I could have made more room. I could have made more space. But definitely at that point in time, I wasn't aware of how my behavior actually was. When you're in it and you're all in with it, you don't see much of anything. There's blinders on, right? So now looking back at 3 years ago, I'm like, okay, yeah, for sure. That is something that I wish I had applied a long time ago. But when you're in it, there's really no other way to explain it, right?
Does it scare you to go all in on something else? Because you now know what that is.
Yes, I'm terrified. So I just transitioned, trying to do my first show for bodybuilding in November. I'm going to do my first show in November. Let me rephrase that. Words are really important to me. And that's one thing, just growing up. And I realized that, affirmation's really important. I am going to do this. Anytime I see somebody to meet, okay, how much are you going to squat today? I'm going to try to squat 550. I'm like, what'd you say? You're going to? Because there's a big difference. I'm going to try and I'm going to. And so I'm going to do a show in November, and it's taken me, my last competitive endeavor was 2019. Once I finished with that, I stepped away. I didn't want to compete anymore. And everybody's like, oh, you're going to come back. And I'm like, no, I did what I said I was going to do. I'm good. Went out on top. I didn't trust myself because I'm obsessive. I am obsessive. I have manic tendencies. When I go all in on something, it's all in. And so like I told you before, with my diet and with everything else, I'm very meticulous about it. I've got my scale. I've got my blood glucose meter. I've got all the things. But it took me 3 years to be able to trust myself, to be able to go all in something, and to be able to make it where I could still live a life. And still come here, right? If this was the case, previously, I would have told you, no, I can't come to Ohio. I can't travel because I'm not going to be recovered to hit my squats. I'm not going to be recovered enough to do these things because of travel. So I figured out almost an optimal range, I feel like, because I'm not all in the way that I was before. And I don't think that I ever can be mentally. And if I want to stay sane, because there's just an absolute monster that lives inside of me, and it still is there. Absolutely. But I know how to manage it a lot better. And I know what situations bring it out. So I'm all in the aspect that I'm committed to being here, but it's not my only hyper focus, because bodybuilding obviously takes 24 hours out of your day. Training and powerlifting definitely was still high level. It was from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, it was all I thought about. But like I said, there's just a lot more meticulous here. And there are things that just, the social life or any kind of relationships, it makes me is nervous because I'm scared that I'm going to fall back into the ways that I was before and just be really mentally unstable. But I realize now that I trust myself, so that if I realize that I'm going down a road that I don't want to be on, I have the ability to change that. If I feel like maybe this is not aligned with me, or I'm not the person that I want to be, I'm not the coach that I want to be because of this endeavor, this isn't the most absolute important thing in my entire life and existence, so I can change it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like now I trust myself, because before it was my entire identity, powerlifting and being the absolute best. I didn't really have anything else in my life that really gave me that sense of accomplishment or identity or validation. That was the only thing. Like when I left Trevor's house, and this is super vulnerable share, when I left Trevor's house after I competed and I, oh, Stacy's the #1 highest all-time Wilks ever. Cool. I went to leave Trevor's house and go back to South Carolina with my family. And I went to leave and Trevor said, okay, it's time to live your life now. And that sounds super dramatic, but I just started crying. And he's like, what's wrong? And he's like, you're free. And I said, I don't know how. I said, I didn't know how to live my life because that was the only thing that I cared about. That was the only thing and my only objective for 5 years. And although it was, 5 years is a short time frame for the big scheme of things, right? But for 5 years, I didn't even have a TV. I didn't do anything outside of eat, sleep, train, really. And so I didn't know who I was. I didn't have, what are your hobbies? Lifting weights, eating chicken. Even still, these are my favorite things to do, but I have an identity now. I know who I am. I know what makes me tick. And I know that I can say no to things if it doesn't align with me. And so I really feel like now I can trust myself to not just be so caught up in it that I just do whatever it takes without blatant disregard to my health, blatant disregard to my mental health. And I trust myself now. But it took me 3 years to be able to create because I was just terrified that I was going to fall back into this and this, these patterns and behaviors, because that's really for a long time all I knew. And I've always been very performance driven, that my worth is determined because of my performance and my output. And so that's something that I've been working actively through gym therapy and through regular therapy, right? Just like to work on I'm more than just the weights that I lift. I'm more than just my training session, good or bad. And so that's something that I've been working on for myself. And I finally now have gotten to the point where I trust myself.
Why did you decide to leave then? Because it would have been so easy to be able to say, well, I need to do it again to validate it. Mm-hmm. And when it's your entire identity, being somebody that's been there, and too long, right? That's conflicting forces in your own head. Oh, yeah.
That was the hardest thing I've ever done, was to walk away. To be on top of the world, to be the absolute strongest person in the world, and to just say, okay, I've had enough.
Well, why'd you do it, though?
Because I would have killed myself. Truly. I was unhappy. I was proud of my performance. I was proud of what my body could do. But I hated who I was. I hated being so selfish. I hated not being able to live in that way. I wanted to make a difference for sure. But I felt like how I was acting and who I was I really making a difference, or was I just entertainment? Was I just a circus freak? Could I make a bigger impact now? Or, when being off drugs or being just in a much better mental state, could I make a bigger and a better, deeper impact? And I knew that I could. I would have absolutely, without a doubt, killed myself if I continued. Strongest person in the world, absolutely. I definitely left before I peaked, I'd say. I know that I could do more and more and more. But truly, I had this goal, this objective that I wanted to accomplish, and I did. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of discipline to do all the things that it takes to get there. But I think it takes more courage and more discipline to walk away from it when that's all you know.
It does.
So that, to me, why I did it is because I knew I would die. I knew that I would not be able to, I wouldn't have made it 5 years, because just the amount of pressure that I put on myself. And if I'm already the best, what else is there to prove, Stacy? What else is there to prove? Okay, you're the best. Okay, you're the best. What's enough? And to me, it's the same thing I'd say after every heavy squat. I'd get done, not enough. How much was it? Not enough. That mentality is great. That mentality will get you anywhere that you want to go. That mentality, that hungry mentality, if you're hungry, you're going to eat, right? No matter what it takes, But at the end of the day, what is enough? And I didn't have an answer. So if I continued to keep doing that, I would have just kept. And eventually the drugs I would have had to up. Eventually I would have had to do more and more and more. This was 100% of my existence. So I'm going to have to continually add more and more to that. And I knew that I wasn't mentally prepared for that. I wasn't able to handle that. And I knew that when I was training and I was like the top tier athlete, my coaching roster, I might have had 20 clients, maybe. The reason being is I didn't care anything about making money. I made enough money to pay my bills, but my top priority was to train. My top priority was me. And so for me to make a bigger, lasting, real impact, I wanted to touch more people, I would work more people, and I needed to expand my business and my training and things of that nature. So I really just had to make a decision. Is this worth it? You want 5 more years of being the absolute very best? Or do you want to make a lasting impact? Do you want to teach other people? And just my whole biggest thing, I had to go back to the main thing, the main driver of why I did this in the first place. My grandpa told me I was the strongest woman in the world. And I proved that. I did that. And I wanted, more than anything, I just wanted to show everyone that if you wanted something bad enough, you could do it. No matter what your last name was, no matter how much money you had, no matter what your childhood was, no matter anything about your life, if you wanted something bad enough and you were willing to put all of your effort, all of your energy, all of it there, you could do it. And so when that was being my biggest, that was the whole purpose behind it all, the most selfish thing I could have possibly done was keep going. And like, I think about it on time and time. I think about it. I'm like, man, I really sold myself short, didn't I? I could have squatted 600 pounds. I could have done this. I could have done that. But I look at where I'm at right now, and truly, this is probably the first time I've ever said this, but I'm proud of myself. And I'm changing people's lives. I'm working with McKendree University as an assistant powerlifting coach. I'm working with, I'm living my dream life. I'm able to help people. I'm able to see the things that, I never had somebody in my ear like this when I was a kid. I never had somebody encouraging me and giving me this kind of feedback when I was a junior in college. You know what I'm saying? I'm able to be that person that I always needed in my life. I'm living my absolute dream, everything that I ever wanted. And it's all because of that ability and that courage to show up and stand up underneath the barbell. But that's not the only thing. You know what I'm saying? That's not the only thing. It's the thing that got me here. And it's the thing that I'm going to keep passing on and continuing to give to other people. But it's about more than that. And walking away from that showed me how strong I really was. Truly.
Well, it's about facing your demons and overcoming them.
Yeah.
Right? So it's easy to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you say the strongest woman in the world, what was harder? Doing those lifts?
Walking away.
Or walking away?
Walking away. And I had no idea. Like when you sign up for whatever it takes, I talk about this all the time. When you sign up for whatever it takes, that's in blood, right? That's real to me. That's not like a fake thing. It's, you don't know what whatever it takes is. You don't know what that means until you're right there and it's time to show up and do whatever it takes, right? So if you've really made that commitment, my commitment to whatever it takes wasn't just to being the strongest woman in the world with moving the weight. It was the strongest woman in the world, period. And so walking away was definitely the hardest part. And I didn't know how that was going to feel. I was completely broken once I got done. I'm not going to lie to you. I struggled to train. And like me being the absolute monster and invincible person that I, set myself up to be, I struggled to train. I struggled to do anything. I struggled to find my motivation. I think motivation's fake anyway, but I struggled to find my purpose again, because I was like, all I know is lifting weights and training super hard and heavy. What is this getting a pump thing? I don't know. But I recreated myself. And so
how did you get through it?
Honestly, the same things that got me through the rest of it. The systems that I put in place to be the strongest woman in the world are the same systems that I put in place to continue to be the strongest woman in the world, but get through the low points, the depression, the post. Once I got done, I was depressed. I mean, I gained some weight. I stopped really caring about training as hard. I stopped really caring about anything. Nothing really seemed appealing to me, but I just wrote that down, right? I wrote that down. I continued to write out my schedules. I continued to write out my days. And so if I could put my effort and energy to something else, I put a lot of effort and energy continually into those same things, the systems that got me through the rest of my training and everything. And I put that into my business. I put that into my training company. I put that into all the effort that I was putting into other things. And I really just leaned in to coaching. I'd been coaching since 2016, but I put my effort and energy into helping other people. And so I kind of put myself on the back burner in a sense. And then I put all my effort into giving to others. But what happened actually was something really cool, because that was something that I previously wasn't doing as much, right? But I put all my effort and energy into helping other people, and that gave me a new sense of self. and really showed me who I actually was outside of just moving the weight.
Were you still going to the gym?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Because it's all I knew. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I have some
No, I get it.
Yeah, it was all I knew. I was going to a UFit. It's pretty much like I moved to Florida and I was trying to find a gym, and, you know, I was training at a UFit. It was close to me. I got yelled at several times for, you know, making too much noise or whatever else, because I still train hard, regardless of if I'm squatting 500 or if I'm squatting 315. You know, it doesn't really matter. But
no, you can't. I mean, a lot of those days you didn't want to go, though.
No.
You still went.
No, discipline. That's what you do, right? And like I would train. Why do I train? I train because I'm psycho, right? Like train to that degree. But also training is something that feels good. It's my favorite part of the entire day.
It does, but I've been through the same path that you're talking about.
Oh, I know, yeah.
It does, right? But it also sucks.
Yeah.
Because you're going in there and you're not
nothing. You're not crap.
You're not what you were.
Yeah.
And you don't even want to lift the weights and you're there, but you just do it. Like, why? Why? You know,
that's all I knew. But then also, anytime I realized, like, if I would have these recurring negative thoughts, or if I felt super depressed or anything like that, I'm like, okay, why am I depressed? I had the awareness to ask myself, what's wrong with you? Why are you depressed? I know the answer. It's pretty obvious, right? Like, I know the answers because I'm not doing the thing that, you know, but, okay, what makes me happy? What am I grateful for? I'm happy. I'm grateful that I have a functioning body. I'm grateful that I can walk away from powerlifting, and I'm able to do that. A lot of people, powerlifting quits them. They don't quit powerlifting. Their body quits them, right? Ain't nothing wrong with me. Okay, mentally, maybe there's a little fog. Ain't nothing wrong with me. And so I just kind of told myself, ain't nothing wrong with you, Stacy. There are people out here that have no legs. They're in the gym. There are people out here that have all these kinds of issues and problems, and there ain't nothing wrong with you. This is your favorite thing to do. You want to know why you're sad? You're choosing to be sad. You're choosing to skip the gym. I had never in 5 years, I was in the hospital for a little bit, right? So I couldn't train while I was in the hospital. But as soon as I got out, against doctor's orders, I was deadlifting. I never missed a session. And I'm talking, I don't mean that as like a, you know, badge of honor. I had rest days that were planned. I never missed a session. Never skipped an accessory exercise. Might have modified or something, but never. I was missing sessions. You know, I'm a coach now, right? So the only person I have to answer to is me. I'm missing sessions. I realize it's making me, I'm not happy. Okay, well, why am I not happy? Because I didn't go to the gym. I'm not happy because of the choices that I'm making, the things, and it's only amplifying that depression. It's only amplifying that negativity that I'm feeling. And I'm supposed to be this leader of empowerment and enlightenment, whatever else. I'm not doing my job. And so if I'm not doing my job, how can I lead other people? And so my motivation to go to the gym was just because I knew that was what I needed. And I knew that if I wanted to lead a strong pack, you've got to be your number one example. You know, I want to lead by example. So I really credit, like, I stayed through and I got through a lot of these hard times because my people, right? Because I want to make sure that I'm still showing you that anything can be done. Even being depressed, not being yourself, going in the gym, lifting half the weight that you were lifting. I'm still lifting. I'm not giving it up. I'm not going to change who I am ultimately. I'm just going to change. I'm going to modify. I'm going to adjust. Good players adjust, right? So that's what you got to do.
For me, I would always show up, not as frequently, you know, but because I was afraid what would happen if I didn't.
Yeah.
That scared me more than going to the gym and hating being there.
Yeah.
Entirely. I mean, being around the sport was a whole other thing. I hated being around the sport I hated it. I still can't go to meets.
Really?
You know, I just hated it because it's too connected, you know, and the separation helped, you know, but you're announcing, you know, so you found a way, you know, to deal with that break, but then embrace it at a large level. You know, how were you able to do that?
The first meets that I went to, and this is another thing, you have no idea how things are gonna feel or make you feel. But you know, the first meets that I went to, because I was coaching and I was still handling people, and I didn't think anything about not going. I would never think about, oh, I'm not gonna go to your meet because I can't be around it. But then when I got there, I realized I was overcome with emotion, and everybody and their mamas is, when are you gonna compete again? Oh my God, when are you? Da, 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 da. And it just brings all these. I don't have time to tell you that these are all the mental battles and hurdles that I'm going through. I don't have time to tell you that I am actually depressed and broken on the inside because I'm not doing this, but that it's best for me and I'm better able to give to others. I don't have the time for that, right? So I just hear and I experience, and I'm like, okay, I would leave meets and I would cry. And I'm not trying to be super like that, but I would cry. I would just be so upset and be like, I miss it. I miss the nothingness. I miss when you're squatting, when you're getting underneath, there's nothing else that matters. Your bills don't matter. Your job doesn't matter. Nothing else matters but moving that weight. And there's just there's a connection to that is unlike anything else. And if you've experienced that, which I know you have, I don't think there's any high in life that can really replicate that. But you watch it, you see it, and you just want it. You crave it. I have a very addictive personality. And so being around it just made me want all in, want to go back to it, want to just hop on some drugs and just bop in. I was like, I could beat all these girls. I remember calling, I think I called Jill. I was like, I left a meet and I was like, I could have won all the money at this meet. I could have won all the money because nobody performed very well. I was like, I could have had a piss poor day and still beat everyone. I am still the baddest. But it's beyond the point. And that's stupid, right? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. That ain't you no more. And so once I dropped that identity, once I finally realized, and it took me some really hard, deep, dark places, right? Where I was just like, what do I even, is this what I want? Is this what I want? Or do I want to go back to it? Do I want to go back to it? But I realized that like, I didn't want to go back to it. I wanted to continue to give to the sport. I wanted to be able to contribute, and I wanted to be able to share my experience, right? The most valuable thing about me is not the weight that I move. It's what I can give to other people. And I fully and truly believe that. And so I could go back and I could compete and I could squat 50 more pounds. Cool. But who I'm going to have to be and what I'm going to have to embody to do that is not worth me losing my coaching ability or the ability that I have to connect with others and just actually be a person, you know? And so the first meets that I was at, I had a really hard time, really hard. But I got through it. I figured out, I put my emotions in check, right? I figured out, I think a lot of times we feel things and we just, for me at least, especially when I was training, the emotions I felt that were deviated outside of the norm or were sad for the most part, I might write them down and be honest, but I tried my best not to feel them. I tried my best to suppress everything. And so that was part of the rage and the anger that I took out in training. But once you actually understand yourself and you can process things, you can feel and manage the emotions, I think that makes you a more holistic and complete person. And just, I don't know, I don't feel the need to do it anymore. So I know that I could. I know it's like an ace in my sleeve, right? So if I ever wanted to, I'll go back to it. I could beat everybody. I'll put that on record. I can go back and I beat everybody, right? Because I think you can do absolutely anything you put your mind to. And it just comes down to the person that's the most committed or has the more time. The reason why I was better is because I decided to commit to it way earlier than a lot of people did. And that's really just the truth, is I just kept showing up. And so now, being able to give in the way to powerlifting that I do, when I first started, powerlifting wasn't a real thing, right? Now it is. And to be able to still be a part of it, to help it continue to grow and be at these bigger meets where there's actually, big money involved and stuff like that, it makes me feel a sense of accomplishment and purpose that I never had whenever I was competing. I truly kind of felt like I was just a circus act the whole time, just because people are just absolutely astounded that this is possible or that this human acts like this in this way. And now I just feel like people look at me a little bit different because they realize that was actually mental illness. That's what we were watching and that's what we were seeing. Now I feel like I have myself in a little bit better place and I'm able to give a lot better. So I like being at the meets now. I like being at the meets. I like encouragement. And I don't feel that need. I don't feel that desire, that craving nearly in the intensity that I did before. I still do. There's nothing like a heavy squat. There's nothing like pulling something that you had no business pulling, right? But also there's no feeling like that after you get done and your back is broken. Oh, yeah. There is no feeling like that. So,
Would you feel like you're more seen now at meets compared to when you were competing?
Oh, yeah. Like, absolutely. I mean, I was at the American Pro, Ana Perez and Micah's meet, and just seeing the video screen, seeing the live stream thing, it's YouTube, all these things. There's occasionally a training video of me on YouTube or some compilation that some
creeper muscle mommy fetish has put together, do you know what I'm saying, about, my training and stuff. But most of my training and most of like my competition stuff, there wasn't a live stream. The people that saw it, that were there, they saw it. And I've had people tell me even to this day that it's the most impactful thing they've ever seen, just because you could tell that I cared more than anybody else had ever seen do it. And it meant that much to me. So people that were there felt it and experienced it, but it wasn't something that was, there weren't cameras everywhere. There wasn't, just this mass kind of, spread to it. And so absolutely, I feel like had this been the situation, undoubtedly I'd have my 1 million followers or whatever else it is. But truly, that's not really what it's all about to me. So if you know, and if you don't.
And what I mean by being seen is, people seeing who you really are. To when you were competing, you're hiding who you really are.
Oh, yeah.
Under the persona of that rage, aggression, and everything that it took to be there, but that's not who you really wanted to be.
I introduce myself now as Stacy, and that's the probably first time, like when I was competing, I was Bama. And I definitely have some personality disorder for sure, but Bama was the facade that I needed to be able to do the things that I did, if that makes sense.
No, I get it.
Yeah, I bet you do. But I'm absolutely, now I am the person that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, the person that you dream about being, I had no idea it was going to look like this, but I am absolutely more myself than I've ever been.
But you had to go through all that shit, to be able to find that. When, with your clients, when you're working with them at a local meet, so you train somebody for a local meet and you help them, and then you watch them squat a PR, bench a PR, deadlift a PR. How does that make you feel?
It feels better than anything that I've ever touched. Like I truly believe, like, and even if it's just a local level meet or just, somebody that's this their first meet, I still work with first time competitors. I love to just teach. That's my biggest thing. Having somebody squat a weight or bench something that they never thought they could, it truly is the most rewarding thing for me, because you're creating, like, and I've had lifters that start with me and I don't know how to do this, I'm really unsure. But then now we're 6 meets, 7 meets deep, and I have a whole different person. I have a whole different animal in front of me that just, they started out as one person, but because they got some confidence, because they realized they were capable, they decided they were going to be more, they were going to be better. And that just, strength underneath the barbell, 100%. I don't care what the science is. I don't care what anybody has to say about it negatively. It makes you a better person. It makes you realize what you're capable of truly. And I don't think that there's any better character building exercise than having a heavy barbell on your back, and the only thing you got to do is just stand up with it. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the number one thing, that just once you do something that you didn't think you previously could, it opens up so many different doors. And so to be able to give that experience, it's their work. So I'm just writing the plan. I'm not doing this. But to be able to share that experience with someone, it's the most rewarding and meaningful thing I've ever done. And every single time at every meet, anytime we have PRs or stuff like that, it's just so meaningful to me. And I'll take this back, back when I was in college. I started personal training just because I needed to work to make some money. Even while I was playing ball and everything, I got my personal training certification, and I started out as a group fitness trainer. I had clients and just, regular moms that just want to tone up, lose weight. And my first experience with that feeling specifically, she got on the scale. We were doing our check-ins, and it was 198. That was her weight. I wrote it down. It was a loss from, 2 or 3 pounds from previous week or previous month. I was excited. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, this is great. And she started crying. And she started crying uncontrollably. And so I'm hugging her, and I'm really confused, right? I'm like, okay, did I write this down wrong? Did something happening that I don't know about? She, came apart from the embrace, and she said, this is the first time, and this is an adult woman. She said, this is the first time I've been under 200 pounds that I can remember. And I don't have any desire to have kids. I never really have. But in that moment, I felt like that's got to be what people feel like when they have kids and they do something that is, just fills their whole heart with something. And just, I knew from that moment, whether it was a low-level personal trainer at a Globo gym or whatever else, I wanted that feeling for the rest of my life. I wanted to be able to give someone that sense of empowerment and just the ability to do that, right? Like the ability to see that they can be something more. They can do anything and set it out, whatever they set out to. And so I remember that feeling, and it's so cool because I pretty much have an athlete competing every weekend or every other weekend somewhere, right? So I get to replicate that feeling all the time. And just to be able to share that with so many people is incredible to me.
If you had to trade that for going back and having the all-time world record, would you?
No. I think the reason why I appreciate this so much is because of some of that too, right? I feel like I would continue to appreciate just those feelings and everything else, but I know what it meant to me to squat that all-time world record because I'm a little obsessive, right? What we talked about, but I knew that if I can do these absolute asinine things, the all-time world record of things, if I, just a normal person, can do these crazy intense things, other people are reminded that they can too. So like my credibility in a sense that people, respect me, they believe in me. When I give them that sense of just like, I know that you can do this, I believe in you, they trust me, right? Because they know that I know what it takes. They know that I've been through this. They know that I fought for a 1 pound bench PR. I didn't miss training. I never missed meals. I didn't miss anything. I PR'd by a pound only because the XPC uses like pounds. Yeah. So I went from 319 to a 320 and it took a year, and that's 365 days for a pound difference, right? I appreciate this kind of stuff, right? And sometimes I feel like just until you've gone through it, until you've experienced that kind of stuff, you can't ever really, you can't share that kind of experience with anybody because you don't know what it's like. But I feel like all my athletes, they really trust me and they appreciate what it is that I give because they know I've been on the other side too.
Well, it also puts you in very rare company when it comes to credibility, because while on that day, many can say you were the world's strongest woman, right? But also on that same day, you've said that you were also the world's most broken woman. You're in a position now that those coming underneath you, behind you, you can see that and save them.
Yeah.
Not many people have that.
And I'm very appreciative for it.
Yes.
So appreciative for it.
Because you can help guide them through that top end and coming out the back end and not have to deal with the demons that you had to deal with because you've been there.
Yeah.
Very few have been there, and so that puts you in very rare company of people that can work with the top all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah. And I think that's truly probably one of my favorite things about myself as a coach is that I want to work with people at the bottom too. Like one of my athletes, I told her, I didn't compete. I didn't go back and Trevor kind of encouraged me. He's like, why don't you just go back and do a sleeve meet before you kind of quit? Cause you can just up your sleeve total. And I was like, oh, absolutely. I could, but I don't have any desire to do that. Right. I had a 148 athlete that I told her, I was like, I'd been with her since the jump. When she first started, she was trying to barely lift the barbell, anything of that nature. And now she's deadlifting 450. She's she's like an incredible athlete. And I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to leave that record down there for you. I'm going to leave that sleeve record down there for you. So I want you to go get it. And I don't care. You don't have to be the most talented athlete. You start with me and my goal is to build you.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're good yet. I can teach you. I can train you. I can give you the tools that you need in the toolbox to make you that top tier athlete. If I get an athlete that is excellent, already a good athlete, that's icing on the cake. That's less work for me to do sometimes. Sometimes it's a lot of unlearning and it's a lot bit harder, to be honest. I would truly love to just you don't have any bad habits or any bad, I can build everything from there. But I love the idea of potential, right? And being able to teach people not just the ins and outs of, okay, this is how you squat, this is how you bench, this is how you deadlift, but this is how you approach life. And when you approach life in a certain way, you put that same amount of effort and attention into your training, into your everything else, like what we talked about, all the other factors. Then I build athletes that I've been with for 7-8 years and just build with. And that to me is so incredibly cool.
How can people find out, and contact you? What's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
My website, bamabricksquad.com. I have a client intake form there, and so you can fill out a client intake form there, and I'll meet you with, responses, email response, and we get started up right after that.
I do coach, an assistant coach for McKendree University. So if you're interested in, you're a collegiate level athlete and that's something you're interested in, contact Brad, head coach Brad over at McKendree, and, we can work on that. But I'm on Instagram as Bama Burr. Champion Mindset Podcast is a podcast. And yeah, that's pretty much how to get a hold of me.
You have a contrast of coaching, right? So you're assistant coach with a team, and then you have the individual coach. They're vastly different.
Very.
And I'm not going to put you in a corner and say, which one do you like better?
My actual training company, I have full ability. I have full control, right? And so when I have full control, Brad is the head coach over at McKendree. He's wonderful. Yeah. But also there are a lot of variables, with schooling, with funding, with just different things like that. So sometimes people aren't necessarily the best fit for a certain college. And so that kind of pigeonholes like who I get to work with, the athletes. On my own training, I have athletes. I've had athletes, super young, but my oldest athlete is like 74. So I have the excessive, I can train with anyone, any level, any age, any skill set.
Well, it's a little different too, because in the university level, training isn't their passion, their sport is. Yeah. You kind of were an outlier, right? Where training ended up, but it could, I mean, it very well could with some of the athletes that are there, but for most of them, they really don't want to do it. Yeah. So
you got to kind of prod a lot. And if I've got a prod, why do you want to be like, if you want to work with me, then I want to encourage, and you want to show up. You want to, you're there, you're in it. It's not an obligation or a chore because you got a scholarship. It is because you want to get better. And that's what I really thrive off of. And it definitely is different. I am so appreciative. I never thought I would be a college coach. I never thought that I'd be a college coach for the sport. Like, I thought if I was going to be a college coach, I got an opportunity to coach college softball early on, and I turned it down because it was no money. I mean, no, and this is still no money. But I realized that coaching, being able to coach powerlifting as like a sport, how cool is that? That's something that didn't exist when I was young. So, I mean, if I can get these kids underneath the barbell, then eventually, hopefully, once they graduate, then I can take them as adults and continue to build that, love for training and things of that nature. So it is different, but I love having just the diversity, and it definitely makes me a better coach. It makes me a better coach because I forget how aggravating I was or how grown I thought I was when I was in college. You think you know everything, right? And so I'm just like, okay, well, you're going to learn today, right? So I get to teach a lot, and a lot of things that isn't necessarily powerlifting related, but it's fun. It's a challenging experience.
So after this bodybuilding show, what you're objective oriented, what's in the future?
I would love to tell you I knew the answer here. My coaches, Justin Mahaley and Ashley Jones, they are very encouraging with me, and they have, told me the reason Justin approached me in the gym. I was just training, and I've always trained, I still trained hard, but he was like, give me 6 months and I'll make you a women's physique pro. And I was like, well, okay. What time do I show up tomorrow? And he was like, seriously? And I was like, that's all I asked. I was like, what time do I show up tomorrow? 10:30. So I've just been showing up at 10:30 every single day to train with him and Ashley, and just training around Ashley has made me she won the Chicago Pro a couple weeks ago. She's a fantastic athlete. Being around somebody that has challenged me to be better is so much fun. I want to continually, after I do these shows, I really truly don't have a desire to go pro, or that's not my main objective. I want to do a show because I want to do it. I want to challenge myself. And I told you before, I just needed to do something hard. I needed to remind myself who I was. I can still do these hard things. I still have this willpower. I still have this discipline. And so just being reminded of that feels good. But I don't really, truly, I don't want to make a career out of bodybuilding because I don't want to continue. I don't want to use the drugs. I don't want to have to measure out my food and 110 grains of rice every day. I want to be able to eat, just full disclosure. But I want to be better. I want to train around people that are training hard with objectives. So if I train with, bodybuilders, or if I train with people, I want to train with people that have that same intensity, that same fire. And so I just want to surround myself with higher caliber people, because I think truly that was one thing that I was missing. Once I backed out of, competing from powerlifting, I kind of hermited again, and I wasn't really around people that were training hard. I wasn't around people that were, actively focusing on their nutrition or things of that nature. And so I feel like you become who you surround yourself with in a lot of different ways. And so I want to continually, no matter if I decide to pursue going pro, which I really don't think is going to be the route that I take, although I have great coaches and they're very encouraging, doesn't really, I don't know. I could get on stage like we talked about. I could get on stage and I could change my mind completely. But me in a bikini with my hair done and makeup, I really don't see that happening, but like a once in a lifetime kind of situation. And so we'll check that off when we get done. But I just want to surround myself with people that are doing better than me, that are doing more than me. And so if that's in the bodybuilding aspect, if that's in the powerlifting aspect, I just want to train for the rest of my life. Pretty much my objective is train hard, be better. And so this has introduced me to a new community, to new people, but I'm probably going to expand my training roster. Now I train mainly majority powerlifting athletes and strength athletes, have a couple strongmen here and there, but I don't really have any bodybuilding athletes. And so that's something I'm just trying to learn from both Ashley and Justin. I'm trying to learn and I'm asking questions actively. And so it's, a new realm for me, but I want to be able to, learn more, move into that, and maybe potentially work with different athletes of different calibers. And so I may down the road, I may decide to do a strongman event. I may decide to do different things because I just always want to be learning. I want to be experiencing new things and just new challenging endeavors, but it doesn't have to be my complete and whole identity. I haven't really thought out past November the 5th. I haven't really thought out what's going to be next, but I know that I don't want to fall into the same, depression. Like I know I'm going to gain 20 pounds, 30 pounds coming back up, but I want to make sure that I'm feeling good, that I'm feeling aligned, and that I'm just really ultimately surrounding myself with high caliber people that are going to make me better, regardless of what the outcome looks like or what the objective is. But I just want to be giving back to powerlifting. I would like to find a way that, if bodybuilding is something that I can contribute to, just share my experience with, I want to be able to do that. I just always want to be sharing my experience with others. And so what that means is I have to be willing to embark on these new experiences and do the scary, hard thing and not know what I'm doing, because truly being at the top tier, in one sport and I go to meets and people are, oh, can you sign this? Can you do this? Go into a bodybuilding show and everybody's like, why are you even here? Like, who are you? It's humbling, but to a whole different degree that I needed, right? Like from being at the top of the mountain to barely having a seat at the table, it makes me realize that there's always more work to be done. And so I just want to continually be in a situation like that, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's strongman, or whether it's just, I'm just training and I set some goals for myself. I want to bulk up to 160 or I want to cut down. I just want to have clear objectives, be surrounded by people that are doing better than me, doing more than me, and that can teach me.
Well, you're not the girl that you grew up in, doubting, trying to get out, where you were. And you're not the woman that was in college. You're not the woman that was powerlifting. So you're not the woman post powerlifting, and as you said, you're Stacy, you're not Bama. Who are you going to be in 3 years?
I'm going to be Stacy Burr, and I'm still going to be the best in the world. That's the biggest thing for me is people used to talk so much about, oh, you were only the best for a little. No, that's not it. I am the best. I am the best in the world, and I'm going to give my absolute very best regardless of what that looks like. But I'm going to continue to be the person that people can count on, to be the person that if I say I'm going to do something, it's done. It's only a matter of time. And I want to maintain and hold that integrity no matter what it is that I choose to do, whatever endeavor, because truly, and not in a over, zealous way, I want to change the world, whatever that looks like. And if that's one person, if that's two people, if that's a whole roster of athletes at McKendree University, excellent. One of the things that I just have really found joy in is being able to offer people opportunities that I never had before. And so truly, whatever that looks like and however that shapes up, I am not the person that I was yesterday. I'm not going to be the same person tomorrow. I'm going to try to be learning every single day. I'm going to try to, just not be afraid to be the person that I'm supposed to be. Because I think just a lot of times we are afraid of who we are. I put Bama on so I didn't have to be Stacy. So I didn't have to feel these feelings. So I didn't have to be, vulnerable or tell people that I was, I grew up poor and I never really had much. That's why I want to have. It's not because of material things. It's not because of, I'm the best and I need to be loud and proud. It's because I've never had it. So I want to have it to show other people that you can get it. And that's just something that I want to continue to do my entire life, no matter what. And so whatever that looks like, I just commit to being a different person every day I wake up. And every day that I wake up, I'm grateful to be here. And I never want to take that for granted.
No doubt about it. You know, I want to thank you for coming out. I appreciate you making the trip, sitting down and having this conversation. And it's going to be fun following your journey forward.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We're done.